Our story begins when he had just stepped out to buy some spicy snacks, only to return and find his father hugging him while weeping uncontrollably. The man even fell to his knees to beg, pleading for him to hand over the spiritual beast he had just awakened to his younger brother. Upon hearing such a request, he didn't hesitate to give his father 2 sharp slaps across the face. We must understand that they live in a world governed by spiritual beasts, where power is everything. Every person, upon reaching the age of 18, has the chance to awaken their very own spiritual beast. In his case, he had awakened a demonic Geo from the abyss, a creature of epic quality. His brother, on the other hand, had only managed to awaken a useless, desperate rat. But since the boy had been linked to a billionaire heiress since childhood, his parents saw him as their guaranteed ticket to a golden future. Because of this, his father ordered him to break his contract and surrender his beast to his brother. If he refused, the man threatened to sever all ties and disown him entirely. Hearing this, his first instinct was to refuse immediately, and who could blame him, really? After all, he told himself that if the demonic Geo didn't agree to the transfer, he would find a way to take the creature with him. But to his absolute surprise, the demonic Geo approached his brother and prostrated itself in a clear sign of submission. It seemed the creature considered itself a noble dragon Geo, far too grand for a common master. Apparently, only a man like his brother, about to marry into massive wealth, was deemed worthy of maintaining it. As for him, its current poor devil of a master, the beast's message was clear. If he couldn't afford its lifestyle, he should just get lost. Witnessing this betrayal, he could only laugh, though his heart was filled with a cold, mounting fury. Since they all wanted the creature so badly, he decided he would give it to them himself. With a single, forceful mental grip, he shattered the chains of the contract in an instant. Immediately, a harrowing, soul-tearing pain surged through his mind as the bond was severed. We must understand that the damage from breaking a contract is permanent, but he decided that a treacherous beast wasn't worth keeping, even as a gift. He endured the agony while looking at his brother. Through blurred vision, he saw the imposing figure of Jian Sanai rushing toward him. One might think the indulgent father was finally showing some regret. Well, perhaps that was a slight exaggeration. In reality, Jian Sanai simply grabbed the demonic Geo's crystal and embedded it into the chest of the younger brother, Jian Ai, to finalize the new contract. And his dear brother, Jian Ai, unable to contain his excitement, let out a loud, triumphant laugh. At that moment, the flames of vengeance began to burn with a cold fury in our protagonist's heart. He told himself that even if it was an epic beast, he would eventually hunt down that traitorous dragon and turn it into monster fodder. With an icy gaze, he turned his back on them and walked out the door with heavy, deliberate steps. "Don't blame your father," he heard Jian Sanai call out from behind him. To be honest, the man had a lot of nerve. He let out a cold laugh, thinking that while he wouldn't blame him now, his father had better not blame him for what was coming. We learned that in just 3 days, the academy will begin the rookie trials. Only those who pass the test will earn the right to enroll in the university. This meant he had to find a way to obtain a brand new spiritual beast before the deadline. So he went to a jewelry store and sold the jade pendant his grandmother had given him for 200,000 spiritual coins. After that, he took a taxi to Nanyang City to find a replacement. He headed straight for Guangzhou Wang, the largest spiritual beast market, and went directly to the rare beast section. On the 8th floor, the hall was filled with dozens of rare quality spiritual beasts in all sorts of shapes and sizes. But when he looked down, he saw that each space capsule was marked with a price of 500,000 spiritual coins. A silver moon wolf nearby was even priced at 800,000, which, naturally, was far more than he had. 800,000. It was highway robbery, plain and simple. He gripped the card containing his 200,000 coins tightly in his hand. He scratched his nose, feeling a bit embarrassed by his own lack of funds. "Don't you have anything a little cheaper?" he asked. He directed the question toward an employee while offering a somewhat awkward smile. To his credit, the salesman didn't show even a hint of contempt or judgment. He simply shook his head and explained the situation with a great deal of patience. "These are all the rare quality spiritual beasts we currently have in stock. If you are looking for something more affordable, you might want to look at the excellent quality ones." His face fell in disappointment, but then he noticed the salesman's tone suddenly shift. "Although, we do have some defective specimens kept in the basement warehouse. The price is much lower for those, as you might expect. But, without a doubt, the quality is quite inferior compared to what you see here. Will you take me to see them?" he asked with a newfound firmness in his voice. For someone with only 200,000 spiritual coins, this was, quite literally, his only chance. He followed the salesman down to the basement, where the air felt thick, damp, and freezing cold. There were rusted iron cages scattered everywhere throughout the dimly lit space. He walked slowly between the cages, carefully scanning each of the beasts trapped inside. Just as he had feared, there was nothing of value, and he began to lose all hope. Suddenly, his eyes caught sight of a small iron cage tucked away in a dark corner. He had barely glanced at it when an absolute avalanche of information flooded his vision. It was almost too much to process, but there, inside the cage, we see a tiny turtle no larger than the palm of a hand. As he approached, the creature struggled to lift its head, and the moment their eyes met, he could see it clearly. He saw the intense plea hidden within its gaze. Its name was Fugiuswalingui. It followed the Puritan path, an autonomous rare-grade classification. Then there was the Sisi Swanlinyogi, the first of its fusion paths, followed by the Bushio Fujialanji, which served as the second fusion path, and finally the Chuanzwa Yuanminasenki, a staggering total of 26 different fusion paths in all. He caught his breath, realizing this was the beast with the most fusion paths he had ever encountered. But wait, suddenly, his gaze locked onto the very last path on the list. The legendary Benzagwan Swanbu. He wondered if this could truly be the legendary Swanbu he was thinking of. His mouth went completely dry as he reached out to gently stroke the turtle's cracked shell. In that moment, the memory of that arrogant smile from the underground resurfaced in his mind. He remembered his father's cold indifference, and it was as if the creature could sense his desire for revenge. A scorching heat began to emanate from the deep cracks in the little turtle's shell. He looked down and discovered that the reflection of a Majiao specter was shimmering in the dirty water. But then, the small turtle did something unexpected and lifted its tiny frame. With a single swipe of its claw, it dispersed the image, leaving him filled with genuine admiration. If that was the case, he decided he would use Jian's Majiao for his own ends. He would treat it as the very first stepping stone toward achieving his Swanbu. As for the specific beast required for the fusion, he would need the Ensui Sure. What a stroke of luck that here in Guangzhou Wang, right in the underground warehouse, there happened to be a crippled Ensui Sure. He carefully lifted the tiny turtle from its rusty cage and made his way toward the corner where the Ensui Sure was kept. He brought the Ensui Sure out with great care, offering it a quiet, gentle greeting. He decided then and there to take both of them, and seeing his determination, the seller didn't say another word. The man agreed, telling him he would charge for them at the price of raw materials. Each one would cost 50,000 lingui. 50,000 was perfectly within his budget, a bargain, all things considered. He was in a hurry to get the little ones home, so he pulled out his lingui card and paid the 100,000 without a second thought. The seller's smile widened significantly as he began to lead him back toward the main floor of Guangzhou Wang. But he wasn't finished yet, stopping the man and offering another 100,000. He asked for 3 additional materials, listing exactly what he needed for the fusion just as the seller was about to leave. By the time the seller departed, we see that every eye in the main hall had turned toward him with poorly hidden curiosity. The onlookers whispered, mocking the man who had dared to buy 2 crippled beasts. They wondered aloud if he had been driven mad by poverty or something worse. After all, why buy such creatures unless one wanted them to be a constant burden? Their harsh, mocking laughter reached his ears, but he remained unmoved. In the palm of his hand, the tiny turtle and the little snake huddled together for comfort. Overwhelmed by shame and sadness, the poor little things began to sob. He could feel them trembling against his skin, their fear palpable. He cast a cold, sharp gaze at those who were throwing insults their way. He whispered softly to them, telling them not to pay any attention to those idiots. He assured them they weren't a burden, for the simple reason that he had chosen them himself. We see the eyes of the 2 little ones fill with pure, stunned incredulity. Upon hearing his words, they carefully lifted their tiny heads to look at him. He stood there for a moment, just staring at the small, fragile creatures in his hand. He nodded with determination, knowing that no one had the right to judge his beasts. Just then, the seller came trotting back and handed him 3 small boxes. Those fusion materials took the very last 100,000 lingui he had left. At that moment, his pockets were cleaner than his mother's, which is to say, completely empty. After taking the materials, he walked straight out of Guangzhou Wang and returned to his hotel. The moment he arrived, he made sure to close the curtains of his room tightly. To be honest, he had no idea what might happen during the fusion process. It was something that defied every known law of logic, and it was a secret that absolutely could not be discovered by anyone else. He told them that the time had come to make them both much stronger. He warned them, however, that the process might be a little painful. He asked them to just make a sound if they found the pain too much to bear. He promised to find a way to help, though deep down, he knew he couldn't stop it. The 2 tiny heads nodded in unison, trusting him completely. In their hearts, they secretly vowed to endure it, even if the pain were to kill them. They knew they had to become stronger. They were determined to protect their kind master at any cost. He opened the 3 boxes and took out the necessary materials, the Chunguan Min Abyss, Water E, and the Zen Knot. He began the work, and to his surprise, the fusion process proceeded incredibly smoothly. By the end, the 2 little ones had even fainted from the sheer intensity of the pain. And unfortunately, they didn't show signs of improvement right away. His heart ached just looking at them, and he told himself that next time, they shouldn't have to endure so much. He would take care of them even if they never became any stronger. Suddenly, a pillar of golden light completely enveloped the little creatures. The energy exploded violently, filling every corner of the room. An invisible wave passed right through the walls and shot straight up toward the sky. The light was as dazzling as a miniature sun. But luckily, every crack and crevice in the room had been tightly sealed. Because the light was so well contained, it failed to attract anyone else's attention, for the moment, at least. Meanwhile, in the mansion of the city lord of Nanyang, Lord Su Tinglan was in the middle of a meeting, discussing the matter of the new dimensional rift that had opened in the city. This particular problem had been tormenting them for over half a year. It was a heavy burden, and just as he was about to speak, boom, in the very next second, a crack formed across the entire meeting table from the sudden pressure. Su Tinglan's pupils contracted instantly in shock. Su Tinglan's pupils contracted instantly. He looked up and stared out across the city through the window. As he gazed out, he saw a golden aura so sacred that he had never witnessed anything like it before. To his mind, there were only two possibilities that could unleash an aura of this magnitude. Either a powerful new dimensional rift had opened, or a legendary tier initial beast had finally emerged. However, he dismissed the second option almost immediately, and who could blame him, really? The idea of a legendary tier initial beast appearing was simply too far-fetched. After all, the world hadn't heard of such a creature in nearly 1,000 years. It was the stuff of dreams. How could one suddenly appear in Nanyang? He called for his guards. His expression became incredibly stern as he prepared to give his orders. Investigate immediately, he commanded. Check every dimensional rift around the city of Nanyang. Meanwhile, back in the hotel room, we see the golden light dissipate as he checks on the turtle and the snake. He quickly discovered that the two little ones had undergone a complete and total transformation. The water spirit turtle, which had previously been no larger than the palm of his hand, was now twice as big, nearly the size of a wash basin. In fact, the old scars on its shell had healed, and it was now covered in a pattern of fine, intersecting lines. On the other hand, the water snake had grown a small, golden, ice-like bump on its head. Its length had reached a full meter, and its black tail had grown significantly larger as well. The snake was found comfortably coiled around the turtle's newly reinforced shell. The two little creatures seemed to be inseparable, as if they were now stuck to one another. Seeing them still unconscious, he breathed a sigh of relief and nervously checked their new descriptions. The name displayed was Spectral Ice and Frostbone Xuanwu. Its potential was now legendary, and it could not be fused again. It had truly become a Xuanwu of the legendary category. He took a sharp, cold breath as he stared at the screen. He found it impossible to calm the racing excitement in his heart. Try as he might, he couldn't settle his nerves. A legendary creature was now his. A potential so powerful he had only ever seen it on television had actually appeared before him. This little one couldn't even be compared to his previous abyss demon rubber. He tried desperately to steady his heartbeat and regain his composure. The memory of last night's betrayal continued to play on a loop in his mind. He thought of the rookie trial tomorrow and hoped Jinai wouldn't take it personally. After all, as the older brother, he felt entitled to collect a little interest in advance. The day of the trial soon arrived, and at the entrance of Nanyang High, students were busy comparing their beasts. They were also on the lookout for strong teammates to help them survive the day. The demonic beasts within the testing grounds are notoriously powerful. For the vast majority of students, teaming up is simply the best option for survival. As soon as he arrived, he spotted a silhouette that was all too familiar. In that moment, Jinai was embracing a stunning woman while they laughed and chatted together. It was his fiancée, Lin Yuting, looking as radiant as ever. And above their heads, the abyss demon dragon circled in the sky. He was surrounded by a crowd of students, all of them eager to cling to Jianai's newfound fame. Boss Jian, you're incredible, they cheered. You actually managed to summon an epic quality dragon. They were certain that first place in this trial would belong to him and him alone. Boss, look over there. Isn't that your brother? One of his lackeys spoke up, pointing directly toward the entrance where he stood. Didn't you say your brother summoned a useless void rat? They wondered why it was now a turtle. Meanwhile, he simply watched in silence with a cold smile. He wanted to see exactly how his dear little brother would try to explain this away. Under that steady gaze, Jinai began to look more than a little nervous. But then Lin Yuting, still in his arms, stepped forward to claim he must have gotten rid of that rat. She sneered, remarking that even a dog wouldn't want a piece of trash like that. Furthermore, she declared that he had stopped being Xiao Ai's brother a long time ago. From now on, you all should be more careful with what you say, she warned the crowd. In her eyes, a useless person like him simply wasn't worthy of the association. After delivering her little speech, Lin Yuting snuggled back into Jinai's arms. Hearing her words, he couldn't help but let out a quiet, amused laugh. His little brother really was a master at flipping the script to suit his own narrative. He wondered, with some irony, exactly when he had become the failure who summoned a void rat. But no matter, he told himself it wasn't quite time for his revenge just yet. He would wait until they entered the trial. That was where he would find the answers he sought. What will he do? What could he possibly do? That was the question on everyone's mind. To be honest, no one knew for sure, and that was the great mystery of the moment. Jinai sneered, asking why he even bothered to bring that useless turtle here just to watch it die. He didn't flinch. Instead, he simply responded with a cold, knowing smile. Jinai, he said, with a talent like yours, it's a real shame you didn't pursue a career in acting. He made it clear he had no intention of wasting his breath arguing any further. He paused for a moment, deciding to offer one final piece of brotherly advice. He looked at Jinai with total contempt, remarking that trash will always be trash. He told him that even if he stole from others, it wouldn't change the fact that he was useless to the core. Having said his piece, he simply turned around and walked away. We see Jinai standing there, frozen, watching his brothers retreating back. In that moment, a flash of pure, murderous intent flickered in Jinai's eyes. He couldn't believe that a failure would still have the nerve to challenge him so openly. Deep down, he decided it was time to teach his brother a lesson he wouldn't forget. He spoke under his breath, his gaze dropping toward the small turtle at his brother's feet. He commanded his abyss demonic dragon to tear that pathetic turtle's shell into pieces. The words had barely left his lips when the dragon suddenly lunged forward like a bolt of lightning. Its purple tail became incredibly sharp as it swung down, aiming directly for Xuanwu. The crowd watched in shock, many of them looking at him with pity or strange curiosity. It seemed it was all over. After all, that beast was at least a high mid-level summon. What terrible luck, we might think, to have a brother capable of summoning a dragon. To the onlookers, it seemed certain that he wouldn't be able to react in time. However, just as the dragon's tail struck, a water shield instantly materialized over the shell and blocked the attack. How was it possible? How could he have possibly reacted with such speed? And more importantly, that little turtle had actually managed to withstand the dragon's strike. Instantly, gasps of pure shock could be heard echoing from every corner of the crowd. Even Jinai, despite his experience, stood there with an expression of total, stunned incredulity. It seemed impossible, and in that precise moment, a light laugh reached everyone's ears. He looked at Jinai with cold, piercing eyes that showed no hint of fear. He had already imagined that his useless little brother would try a cowardly surprise attack. Since Jinai had chosen to strike first, he told him not to blame anyone for what came next. He was just about to order Xuanwu to counterattack when, suddenly, a loud bell rang out. The rookie trial had officially begun, cutting the confrontation short. All the students around them scattered instantly, rushing toward their designated starting points. He frowned slightly and raised his hand to stay Xuanwu, who was already prepared to strike. Jinai seized the opportunity, grabbing his companion's hand and sprinting toward the entrance. But before leaving, he couldn't resist turning back one last time to call his brother useless. He shouted back that he looked forward to watching him die inside the testing grounds. With a smile full of quiet contempt, our protagonist began walking toward the crossing with Xuanwu. Once inside the trial space, we find him standing right in the middle of the testing field. Inside the trial space, we find him in a lush jungle, while overhead, several detection spheres installed by the Alliance patrol the area to keep everything under control. According to the rules, he must hunt down beasts to earn points. His goal is ambitious, to break into the top 1,000 of the entire Alliance. He checks the time and realizes there are only 3 hours left before the trial ends. He knows he has to hurry, calling out to his companion, Xuanbao. This time, they are determined to take first place. Xuanbao, as it turns out, is the nickname he gave to Xuanwu. It's a simple name, chosen specifically to hide Xuanwu's true identity from prying eyes. Xuanbao nodded with determination, ready for whatever lay ahead. His gaze was firm. He also felt that the bad guy from earlier deserved a harsh punishment. He gave Xuanbao a gentle pat on the head and guided him deeper into the forest. Soon, they encountered their first beast, a giant wolf, 2 meters long. It had silver-blue fur, and visible electric sparks jumped between its sharp fangs. This was a Lei Jialong wolf, a bronze rank, level 2 creature. Starting with a level 2 beast with an electric attribute is quite a challenge. For most participants, this would be a very bad sign indeed. In fact, a single small mistake could mean the end of their journey right here. With a look full of confidence, he gave the order, Xuanbao, finish him. He commanded him to use Xuanbu Siyu, and Xuanbao was more than ready. A fierce battle spirit was already burning deep inside the little creature. This was to be their very first fight since the transformation. Upon hearing the order, a wave of dark blue water began to swirl and form around Xuanbao. He lunged forward immediately, and the water shield easily blocked the Lei Jialong wolf's electric bite. The impact even shattered 2 of its fangs, sending the wolf flying until it crashed hard against a tree. He then commanded him to use Taijin Xuanbu, and Xuanbao opened his mouth to spit out a deep blue mist. The Lei Jialong wolf had no time to dodge and was completely enveloped against the tree. Xuanbao stood amidst the mist, and after a deafening roar, the vapor finally began to dissipate. On the ground, nothing remained but a perfectly intact wolf skeleton. Immediately after, a sphere of light and energy rose from the bones and merged into Xuanbao's body. He felt the change in Xuanbao, calculating that killing just one more level 2 beast would trigger a level up. What surprised him most, however, was that little Xuanwu had annihilated a higher level beast with a single attack. He couldn't help but praise him, telling Xuanbao that he was truly incredible. He leaned down to give him a hug, only to realize that the little creature was actually crying. He understood why. The poor little guy was simply overwhelmed with emotion. He had spent so much time locked away in that dark underground warehouse in Guangzhou, enduring endless insults. But finally, at long last, all of that suffering had come to an end. That enormous emotional burden he had been carrying was finally being released. He reached out his hand and gently rubbed Xuanbao's forehead to comfort him. He leaned in and whispered softly into his ear to offer some reassurance. He promised him that those dark days would never, ever happen again. He told him that, in the future, he would become the strongest battle beast in the entire world. The two little ones nodded vigorously, even as tears continued to roll down their cheeks. They swore right then and there to protect their master with their very lives from that moment on. Once Swanbao had finally regained his composure, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. And so, we returned to the hunt as they continued searching for prey within the forest. After the experience with the Lei Jialong wolf, they decided to specifically seek out even stronger beasts. The trial space was certainly not small, providing plenty of room for danger to hide. After more than 10 minutes of searching, they finally encountered a second beast. It was a poison-tailed scorpion, a bronze rank, level 2 creature. Now, while this scorpion is also a poison attribute beast, it wasn't even close to Swanbao's level, to be perfectly honest. Swanbao's Taijin mist quickly surged forward and completely enveloped the poison-tailed scorpion. In a matter of seconds, the creature was corrupted and decayed, leaving nothing behind but a husk. An energy orb rose from the scorpion's remains and sank directly into Swanbao's forehead. Seeing this, he immediately checked Swanbao's status information to see the results. Swanbao had successfully leveled up, reaching bronze level 2 directly. But there wasn't even time to celebrate before a surge of spiritual power flooded his own mind, raising his level to bronze level 2 as well. A beast tamer's level depends on their beast, and as his spiritual power grows, he will have the chance to contract even more creatures. He gently stroked little Swanbao's head, feeling incredibly happy with their progress. Afterward, he took Swanbao deeper into the forest to hunt for more high-level demonic beasts. Regardless of whether they were level 1 or level 2, they took down every single one they encountered. And just like that, his points began to skyrocket like a rocket heading for the stars. Meanwhile, over at the Nanyang High School monitoring room, the man in charge, Wu Yang, was quite busy. He was uploading surveillance footage to the Alliance headquarters when he heard footsteps behind him. It was the school's principal, Lu Yifeng. The principal rushed over, his eyes fixed intently on the rankings displayed on the large screen. He immediately asked how many of their students had managed to break into the top 1,000 spots. Wu Yang simply shook his head upon hearing the question, which was never a particularly good sign. He noted that the level of talent this year seemed even worse than the previous one. So far, only 3 students from their school had managed to make it onto the list at all. Principal Lu Yifeng shook his head, unable to hide his deep disappointment with the situation. Wu Yang continued, explaining that of those 3, only Jianai, the epic talent summoner, had reached the top 200 with barely 1,000 points. The other 2 were struggling further down, barely holding on below the 800th position. Principal Lu Yifeng shook his head once more, feeling the weight of the news. He sighed, remarking that the situation for the entire alliance wasn't looking very good this year. Fewer than 200 people across the board had managed to reach the 1,000-point mark. If things continued this way, they were bound to lose the world challenge against the Inner Demon clan yet again. Wu Yang sighed as well, sharing in that same sense of disillusionment. If the alliance were to lose again this year, it would set a new and rather grim record of 10 consecutive defeats. Just as he was about to look away and get back to organizing the student videos, his gaze caught a name that suddenly flashed at the bottom of the screen, Nanyang High School, Jianling. Wu Yang let out a small smile, preparing himself to share this sudden bit of news with the principal. But suddenly, he realized that this name was climbing the ranks like a rocket heading for the stars. In the blink of an eye, the name had already broken into the top 500. He called out for the principal to look quickly, just as Lu Yifeng was about to leave the monitoring room. Hearing the urgency, the principal turned back and followed Wu Yang's gaze toward the alliance rankings. At that very moment, Jinling's name had shot directly up to the number 100 spot. And it didn't stop there. The points next to his name continued to increase at a truly terrifying speed. They smashed through the 2,000-point barrier, causing Lu Yifeng's pupils to contract in pure shock. He stood there, frozen, staring intently at that single name on the screen. He wondered how it was even possible for someone's points to increase at such a frightening pace. Wu Yang's first instinct, naturally, was to assume there had been some kind of data error. After all, even Jianai, with her epic talent, barely had a little over 1,000 points to her name. How could this boy, in just a few minutes, manage to not only reach her level, but exceed it by 1,000 points? He quickly set to work, reviewing every piece of data available to find an explanation. He even went as far as reporting the anomaly to the Alliance headquarters for verification. The final result came back shortly. There was absolutely nothing wrong with the numbers. Lu Yifeng tried his best to remain calm, but an irrepressible smile began to spread across his face. By then, Jinling's points had already crossed the 3,000 mark, placing him firmly among the Alliance's top 10. He was only 600 points away from first place, and his rate of growth hadn't slowed down in the slightest. Principal Lu Yifeng immediately ordered Wu Yang to pull up the boy's surveillance video. He remembered then that, if he wasn't mistaken, this was actually Jianai's older brother. But as far as he understood, the boy had only managed to summon a common-class Jedi rat. In that very instant, Wu Yan also began to grasp the true gravity of the situation. Without wasting a second, he searched the equipment screen and pulled up the live broadcast. Jinling's name was climbing the rankings at a truly dizzying speed. And then, just like that, he had reached the #1 spot. His points quickly smashed through the 5,000 barrier as well. Lu Yifeng stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the display. He leaned in closer to the screen, desperate to see the live feed for himself. In the broadcast image, we see Jinling with Xiao Xuanwu following a stream deep into the forest. If you look closely, you can see the human and the beast moving together. By now, both of them had already reached the Bronze 4 rank. He asked Zhuang Bao if he was absolutely certain about what he had sensed. He wanted to know if there really was a rank 6 beast waiting in the depths. He spoke while panting heavily, struggling to keep up such a fast pace. Xiao Xuanwu simply nodded, his gaze filled with a quiet, steady determination. With 30 minutes left, he decided it was time to see just how strong a rank 6 beast could be. 10 minutes later, they indeed found a Bronze 6 beast, a formidable Shibakshan. As he stared at the dark brown fur of the creature, he found himself momentarily speechless. The mere aura of a Bronze 6 rank was something no lower-ranked beast could ever hope to match. If Xuanwu were rank 5, he wouldn't worry, but at rank 4, things were far more complicated. The creature outranked them by 2 entire levels, a gap that was hard to ignore. And what was even more unsettling for him was the fact that they weren't alone. We see a team of 5 people being completely overwhelmed by the Shibakshan's sheer pressure. They were retreating constantly, and before long, they found themselves cornered right against the stream. "Boss, will we actually be able to escape?" one of the teammates asked in a raspy voice. "What are you so afraid of? This beast has almost no strength left in it." He ordered them to keep pushing forward, insisting they would simply wear it down until it died. That was Jinai speaking, as he grabbed one of his own companions to hurl him toward the front. He watched the whole scene, remembering how his dear brother had always been this way, selfish and ruthless. "What a coincidence, my dear little brother," he thought to himself. He let out a cold, quiet laugh, deciding to observe just a bit longer before making a move. The companion who had been pushed tried to scramble back, but the Majiao blocked his path entirely. Now, the poor man was trapped, unable to flee and terrified to move forward. The Shibakshan didn't hesitate for a second, ending his life with one single, furious swipe of its claws. Jinai, for his part, didn't show even the slightest hint of remorse at any point. Instead, he reached out his hand to grab yet another companion to throw into the fray. "Now it's your turn. Go out there and finish it off," he commanded. Before the man could even react, he had already been tossed directly in front of the Shibakshan. With bloodshot eyes and his final breath, he screamed that Jinai was nothing but a monster. However, Jinai couldn't have cared less, and he proceeded to throw his very last remaining companion forward. Furthermore, he signaled the Majiao to find the perfect moment to trap the Shibakshan. His plan, of course, was to buy enough time for himself and Yin Yating to escape. The Shibakshan stared down at the new person who had just been tossed its way. It unleashed its furious claws, ready to end yet another life in an instant. But at that exact moment, the speed of the attack suddenly began to slow down. Before it could even react, a mysterious blue mist surged forward and enveloped it completely. From deep within the thick fog, a single, heart-wrenching howl echoed through the air. When the mist finally cleared, only a skeleton remained of the once imposing Shibakshan. Jinai stood there, petrified. He grabbed Yin Yating and turned around to flee as fast as he could. Suddenly, he felt a strange sensation. He couldn't move a single muscle. "Trying to run away, little brother? It seems we meet again." The voice sounded defiant, and in total disbelief, Jinai turned his head to watch him approach. With a mocking smile, he reached out and gave Jinai a few light, condescending pats on the cheek. "What's this? You won't even call me brother anymore." Meanwhile, an energy orb emerged from the beast's corpse and drifted into Xiao Xianbu's forehead. Xianbao ascended directly to Bronze V, and the crushing pressure of the abyssal sea intensified. Jinai felt the weight of that power settle over him like a physical burden. His back grew heavy, and Yin Yating, unable to endure it, collapsed right onto the ground. Jinai's pupils contracted sharply as the reality of the situation finally set in. In that moment, to him, the man standing there looked like nothing less than a demon. "Die, you cursed beast!" he screamed, his eyes burning with a fierce, desperate rage. The abyssal Majiao's tail lashed out, activating its deadly shadow horn assassination skill. The target of the strike was the young man himself, but the attack didn't even graze him. It was completely blocked by the sturdy black tortoise shield summoned by Xianbao. "Jinai, you really are ruthless," he remarked, having no doubt about his brother's intentions. That abyssal Majiao strike had been calculated for one purpose only, to kill him. Taking a deep breath, he delivered a sharp kick that sent Jinai crashing to the ground. He pressed his foot onto Jinai's face, asking if he or their parents ever imagined this day would come. To be perfectly honest, there were moments when he truly felt like ending it all right there. Jinai had never been so close to the cold embrace of death in his entire life. In that terrifying moment, his eyes were wide, reflecting the sheer gravity of his situation. His body was paralyzed by despair and terror as he stammered, wondering how that turtle could be so strong. "This is the trial space," he practically shrieked. "You aren't allowed to kill me here." He shouted it as if the words themselves could protect him, while fear surged through his entire being. He calmly withdrew his foot, assuring Jinai he wouldn't kill him before turning toward the immobilized Ma Jiao. However, he fully intended to collect a small advance on the interest Jinai owed him. He commanded Xian Bao to keep the filthy creature pinned down and unable to move. Xian Bao snorted, and an even more crushing abyssal pressure locked onto the Ma Jiao. The abyssal Ma Jiao stood no chance and fell straight out of the sky under the weight. After all, Xian Bao was now 2 entire levels stronger than the beast, which changed everything. The Ma Jiao was simply no match for him. He looked at it with a mocking grin, drew a small knife from his clothes, and sliced directly into the beast's phosphorescent skin. Jinai screamed in absolute terror, demanding to know what he was doing to his Ma Jiao. "Your Ma Jiao," he laughed, the irony of the statement not lost on him. He aimed for its reverse scale and, with a single swift stroke, tore it away along with a chunk of flesh. The abyssal Ma Jiao let out a roar of pure agony, but Xian Bao's pressure was so immense it couldn't move an inch. Next, he pointed the knife at the black lump on the Ma Jiao's head and ripped it out as well. "Stop it, you cursed beast!" Jinai shrieked, his eyes bloodshot with rage. Deep down, he wanted nothing more than to kill his brother at that very moment. However, just then, the space around them began to distort. The first trial, which had lasted 3 hours, had finally come to an end. Everyone was automatically transported out of the forest and arrived at the stage for the second trial. Meanwhile, back in the monitoring room, Lu Jifeng held his breath. His eyes were fixed on the young man, and the last frozen image on the screen reflected pure admiration. "This boy is relentless," Wu Yin remarked, while also uploading the latest footage. He sent the most recent video files directly to the Alliance headquarters. And so, the final rankings for the first trial were officially settled. In first place was Jianlin from Nanyan High School, with 10,860 points and an S rank. And far below him, in second place, was Su Xiaoxiao, with only 2,600 points. Lu Jifeng stared intently at the names sitting at the very top of the screen. His heart began to race. Nanyan had just produced the very first S rank in the entire Alliance. How long had it been, he wondered, since he had felt this level of genuine excitement? Before he could even recover from the shock, the door to the monitoring room was violently kicked open. The lady of the city, Su Tinglan, marched inside with an imposing and resolute air. Upon seeing Lu Jifeng, she asked him directly, "Director Lu, what is the deal with this Jianlin?" The Alliance headquarters wouldn't stop calling her. They were practically blowing up her phone. Lu Jifeng simply shook his head and offered a somewhat bitter smile. Su Tinglan took in everything that had happened and, finally, pointed at the frozen image on the monitor. "It's that contracted beast," he explained. "In my 60 years, I have never seen anything like it." Su Tinglan stared intently at Xian Bao on the screen, trying to make sense of it. She asked if this combination of a turtle and a black snake had really killed the thorny bear in one blow. Lu Jifeng nodded, though Su Tinglan still found the entire situation difficult to believe. Imagine it, a 5th-level turtle, no larger than a wash basin, performing such a feat. Could it truly kill a 6th-level thorny bear, completely surpassing its own rank? But the truth, as they both knew, could only be uncovered by asking the boy once the trial ended. "Carry on," she commanded, "and show me the monitoring for the second stage." When the young man opened his eyes again, he and Xian Bao had arrived in a room less than 100 meters wide. The surrounding walls were crafted from a strange, shimmering golden metal. In the entire room, there was no one else, just him and his loyal Xian Bao. He quietly tucked away the trophy he had just cut from the beast into his pocket. Deep down, he knew that Jianggai Xinyuan was seriously injured. With things as they were, he realized the boy wouldn't stand a chance of getting into Tsinghua University, would he? As he thought about this, a small, knowing smile crossed his face. The second stage was no longer about hunting demonic beasts for points, but rather seeing how long each candidate could survive an onslaught. They would be facing automatons, and their points would increase the longer they managed to stay standing. As soon as he found his footing, the stone door opened and a test automaton created by Jiangguang City entered the room. Its rank was clear, a level 2 bronze test automaton. The machine didn't hesitate. It ignored Xian Bao entirely and lunged directly at the young man. He ordered Xian Bao to attack, and the beast first used its heavy pressure to slow the machine before unleashing its magic. It completely crushed the test automaton, reducing it to nothing more than a pile of molten iron. He stared at the melted metal cooling less than 5 meters away from where he stood. He took a sharp, cold breath, feeling the weight of the moment. And here we see the true difference in this second stage of the trial. The primary targets for these test automatons aren't the beasts at all, but the summoners themselves. Realizing the danger, he immediately moved to hide behind the sturdy frame of Xian Bao. Even though he had reached level 5 bronze, in reality, he was still no different from an ordinary person. He understood that a summoner remains vulnerable until they can fully manifest their power. It is only through intense progression that a summoner can finally awaken their exclusive talent abilities. Until that breakthrough happens, they possess no more physical defense than any common person on the street. Just then, the stone door creaked open once more, and an even more powerful test automaton emerged to face them. Xianbao, acting on its own initiative, covered him with a layer of swan bu jade to protect him from the incoming attacks. Unlike the previous one, this new test automaton was crafted from blazing firestone. Its level was among the best they had seen, standing as tall as any grown man. Its designation, the Fire Test Automaton. Its rank, level 3 bronze. The machine charged in without giving him a single moment to react. It raised its left arm, took aim, and fired 3 consecutive blasts of fire directly at him. He had no time to move and was struck, but fortunately, thanks to Xianbao's jade, he didn't suffer a single scratch. 3 minutes passed, and after the level 5 bronze thunder automaton was also destroyed, the machines finally showed a change in tactics. He backed against the wall, watching as 2 new test automatons entered through the stone door, one of wood and one of earth. Both were level 5 bronze. It seemed that from here on out, they would be attacking in groups. He carefully kept his distance from the machines, knowing the stakes. If they managed to land even a single hit, he would have to start the entire trial over again. As the level 5 thunder automaton fell, we moved to the monitoring room, where the city leader, Suddingland, finally saw what he was truly capable of and no longer harbored any doubts about his S-rank qualification. In fact, S-rank was no longer enough. On the Alliance leaderboard, his score had surpassed 20,000 points, making him the first SS rank. Suddingland's pupils contracted in sheer disbelief at the sight. She stared fixedly at the name glowing on the screen, unable to look away. How many years had it been since an SS rank appeared in the Shingo Alliance? Was it 1,000 years? Or perhaps even 2,000? To be honest, everyone had stopped counting. Inside the testing chamber, he successfully overcame yet another mechanical trial. He had already survived for more than 9 minutes, but deep down, he felt he couldn't hold out much longer. Suddenly, the 10 level 5 bronze test automatons inside the room began to shift and transform. He watched as the cores in their chests began to spin frantically, their various attributes intertwined, finally merging into a single giant, 5 meters in height. In the monitoring room, the leader of the Shingo Alliance watched the arrival of this massive, multicolored composite automaton. Well, it seems that was a possibility as well. Who would have thought? His expression remained unreadable as the level of the giant composite machine skyrocketed directly into the silver rank. No matter how strong his Xianbao was, it was simply impossible to withstand so many consecutive waves. And as we might have expected, in the end, both were unfortunately eliminated. His survival time stopped at exactly 1,000 seconds, and his final score shattered the 30,000-point barrier. His final rating, SSS. Suddingland was so utterly shocked that she couldn't even find the words to speak. To be perfectly honest, she had never even heard of a SSS rating before. Furthermore, in the entire Spark Alliance, no one had reached 30,000 points in thousands of years. When the Alliance first designed this trial for rookies, they never imagined anyone could actually break that limit. To cross that threshold, the summoned being had to be, at the very least, a high-level automaton. The expansion of control began with 2 debates led by what appeared to be very influential chiefs. We see that they have placed 2 leaders at the forefront with a truly well-known group. After completing the 3 decisions, they prepared to face a more aggressive opponent who was becoming quite famous. Regarding the core of Eric Vanaker and the performance of Helen Chung-hae, the mystery of the Spark Sarnia figure finally began to unfold. The subway journey finally came to an end at 3 in the afternoon on that July day. The trial was over, and while not many people remained, he had barely set foot back at the entrance. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream erupted from behind him, a desperate vow to end his life. It turns out that Jinai, after being wounded by the demonic abyss Jiao, hadn't lasted even 3 seconds in the second phase. He had been eliminated, and apparently, he had been waiting at the entrance this entire time just for this moment. To make matters worse, his ranking had plummeted out of the top 1,000, costing him his right to enroll in Spark University. With eyes bloodshot from rage, Jinai drew a dagger and lunged directly toward him. Our protagonist simply let out a cold laugh and drew a knife of his own. With a single, effortless movement, he deflected the dagger and sent it flying through the air. He knew his little brother's abilities perfectly, perhaps a bit too well. He told him quite bluntly that he was a complete and utter failure. Jinai collapsed to the ground, but hearing those words, he flew into a fresh rage and tried to attack once more. But at that exact moment, dozens of members from the local press appeared on the scene. The security staff quickly intervened, detaining Jinai and completely surrounding our young hero. The officer in charge looked at him with a very serious expression. He informed him that the director wanted to see him in the monitoring room immediately. He froze for a second, realizing that his performance during the trial had clearly caught the director's eye. Though, to be perfectly honest, he still had no idea what his final score actually was. He nodded, and surrounded by the staff, he slowly disappeared from the trial entrance. Before leaving, he turned his head and gave one last icy look to Jinai, who remained defeated on the ground. He told him that he should feel lucky, for if killing weren't forbidden during the trial, his corpse would already be cold. Having said that, our protagonist walked away without a single backward glance. Jinai's eyes remained bloodshot, burning with a mixture of agony and humiliation. As he watched that back disappear into the distance, he felt a desperate, hollow wish to tear him to pieces. Beside him, the demonic abyss Jiao lay motionless on the ground. Judging by its fading aura, it was clear that its injuries were extremely grave, perhaps even fatal. After all, what had been torn away was the inverse scale, the most vital part of any Jiao dragon. Lin Yuting reached out and squeezed Jinai's hand, trying to offer some semblance of comfort. She urged him to go with her, promising to find the best healer available to help him recover. But Jinai, his face clouded with a dark, somber expression, simply refused to move. A single tear of blood rolled slowly from the corner of his eye, marking the depth of his defeat. A long silence followed before he finally managed to force out a few words, begging Yuting for her help. Lin Yuting nodded firmly, telling him not to worry and calling him by his nickname, Xiao Ai. She vowed that before the Spark University exam, her family, the Lin Jia, would make him disappear forever. At that very moment, the demonic abyss Jiao also began to regain consciousness. Its dark, purple pupils fixed on our heroes retreating back, overflowing with a pure, unadulterated hatred. The creature hated him because, if he knew a way to make it stronger, why hadn't he shared it sooner? Deep down, it felt that had it known the cost, it might have made a very different choice. It loathed him for completely ignoring their bond and mercilessly tearing away its inverse scale and horn. Meanwhile, we move to the monitoring room of Nanyang High School, where a staff member has just led our protagonist. It was at that moment that Director Lu Yifeng approached our hero. He gestured toward an imposing woman and introduced her to him. She was none other than the mayor of Nanyang City, Sudinglan. Then, he pointed to a middle-aged man with an expression of profound respect. He introduced the mayor again, and then presented the man as the inspector general sent by the military district, Mr. Su Xian. He was the man responsible for overseeing the fairness of the rookie trials in every city. Our protagonist's pupils contracted suddenly in shock. That name was legendary throughout the entire Xinhua Alliance. Su Xian was not only a holy-level beast summoner, but he had also been the world champion of the challenge against the lesser dragon race 10 years ago. Filled with excitement, he immediately offered a respectful bow. It was an honor to meet the mayor, he told her, and an equal honor to meet the inspector general. Su Xian smiled warmly and helped him stand with a simple wave of his hand. He told him that his name had already caused quite a stir within the military district. He also realized he hadn't offered his congratulations yet. He congratulated him on securing first place in the entire alliance with a SSS rating, a total score that exceeded 30,000 points, an incredible feat by any standard. The number one in the entire alliance. The news left him a bit stunned. This result had completely surpassed all of his expectations. Even he hadn't imagined he would actually break the alliance record. Su Xian gave him a friendly pat on the shoulder, a gesture of genuine approval. He told him that thanks to his performance, the high commands of the alliance and the army were absolutely buzzing with excitement. Our hero scratched his head and smiled shyly, wondering if it was really such a big deal. However, Su Xian warned him that many powerful factions already harbored a secret grudge against him, and all because he was the very first SSS rank in the entire history of the alliance. Suddenly, Su Xian's expression turned quite serious, shifting the mood instantly. He asked directly where that initial beast of his, the one of legendary quality, had actually come from. Upon hearing those words, our protagonist felt his heart skip a beat. Su Xian had noticed, but thinking it over, that was only logical, wasn't it? After all, Su Xian is a holy-level beast summoner of immense power. If he hadn't been able to sense the legendary aptitude of his companion, that would have been the real surprise. He quickly composed himself and explained he found his companion while searching for wild vegetables in the southern outskirts. The creature had been lying unconscious right there on the bank of a stream. He added that when he saw it, there were still spatial fluctuations lingering all around it. Spatial fluctuations? Could it possibly be a subworld fissure? That specific term immediately flashed through Su Xian's mind as he listened. We should note that in this world, there are two types of rifts, world fissures and subworld fissures. World fissures connect to massive, complete worlds with very well-established rules and structures. Places like the world of the Lesser Dragons or the Nemu world, with whom a war is set to begin this year. The vast majority of these worlds are hostile to humanity, always longing to devour the Alliance entirely. Because of this, the Alliance used a high-level strategy to move all 36 world fissures to the frontier battlefield, safely tucked away, of course, beyond the Great Protective Wall. On the other hand, we have the subworld fissures, which connect to small, incomplete secret domains. Some of these domains are of such high level and quality that they can even be used as bargaining chips in global challenges. As Su Xian listened to the explanation, his reaction was one of pure intrigue. A subworld fissure of legendary quality had apparently appeared out of nowhere. A subworld fissure of that specific caliber is already considered a vital strategic resource. Noticing Su Xian's expression, our hero continued explaining that the spatial fluctuations vanished within seconds, and seeing no danger, he ran over to pick up Xian Bao. He gently stroked Xian Bao, and the little creature responded with genuine affection. Upon hearing this, Su Xian's gaze darkened just a little. He knew immediately that the young man was lying to his face. But, well, what did it really matter in the end? To be honest, he never truly expected to get a straight answer anyway. You are very clever, so I won't beat around the bush, Su Xian said, smoothly changing the subject. He stopped pressing the issue and moved on to the main mission that had brought him there. First, he explained, he needed to report the boy's actual situation to headquarters. And second, he continued, he was speaking on behalf of the entire army. He explained that there was a very important matter where he would need the boy's help. It concerned this year's global challenge, a high-stakes event, to say the least. Upon hearing those words, our young hero couldn't help but frown. The global challenge? Su Xian stopped beating around the bush and signaled to Su Tinglan. Su Tinglan, the lady of the city, was standing right there by his side. She began to recount what had been discussed earlier during their first meeting. The weight of her words suggested that something significant was finally being set in motion. Please, take note of this, she urged, as she prepared to brief Su Xian on the details. Su Xian waited, wondering what exactly was expected of him this time. So, he asked, what exactly would he be facing in such a challenge? The answer was something far more profound, the world of the succubi. Their power is immense, especially in mental attacks, and the alliance's odds of winning are extremely low. The boy nodded, as he had already seen some news about the global challenge. He had come across reports online, and at that moment, Su Xian opened a secure file. He projected a detailed map showing the current borders of the alliance. You must realize, he said gravely, that the alliance has already suffered 9 consecutive defeats. If we lose again this year, do you understand what 10 consecutive losses actually mean? Suddenly, he turned and looked at the boy with an incredibly somber expression. It means that the alliance will be forced to surrender its own territory. Upon hearing that, the boy took a deep, heavy breath. He hadn't imagined that the alliance was in such a critical situation. Historically speaking, there had never been a precedent for ceding territory like this. Su Xian leaned his head back for a moment and then began to pace. He closed his eyes, noting that the minimum loss would be an entire city, including all its inhabitants. And what would happen to those people after being handed over? Su Xian smiled bitterly, remarking that, in the best-case scenario, they would face a quick death. Otherwise, those beasts are capable of doing just about anything, which is a terrifying thought. The boy's pupils contracted suddenly. Was the situation truly that terrible? We must keep in mind that a city has, at the very least, 5 million inhabitants. That is why, in this challenge against the succubus world, they simply cannot afford to fail. He nodded with a serious expression, feeling that this alliance reminded him of the Rome nation from his past life. Deep down, he wasn't willing to let something so tragic happen again. At that moment, Su Xian expanded the map to show more detail. The greatest advantage of the succubi is their mental attacks, which happens to be the alliance's greatest weakness. Therefore, it was imperative for them to find a path toward survival. Failure was not an option as Su Xian pointed to a small, glowing spot near the Great Guardian Wall. The poise core produced in this underworld rift can nullify mental attacks, specifically those of a seductive nature. If they could secure a high-quality poise core, they could forge special helmets to turn the tide of battle. Suddenly, Su Xian turned and looked at the boy with an intense, unwavering gaze. I need you to go in and find the core of that rift, Su Xian said, his voice heavy with the weight of the world. The gravity of the request was clear. Without that core, everything would fall apart. And in that moment, the boy finally understood Su Xian's true purpose. However, he couldn't help but wonder if the man was overestimating him just a little bit. After all, he was barely a bronze rank, level 5, hardly the profile of a legendary savior. To be honest, entering a place like that felt less like a mission and more like a death sentence. But Su Xian simply shook his head, explaining that this particular rift was quite special. It seems that only those of bronze rank, level 5 or lower, are actually permitted to enter. This made him the perfect candidate, and to help, Su Xian promised to assign 2 teammates to complete the mission alongside him. We should note, however, that the rift remained extremely dangerous despite the level restriction. Many had already failed before him, but as the only SSS rank available, he was their last remaining hope. Only he could achieve it, and with those final words, Su Xian offered him a formal military salute. He promised that if the boy accepted, regardless of the final outcome, the army would reward him with an epic weapon featuring a special attribute. And as soon as the word reward was mentioned, his interest was, naturally, instantly piqued. He told himself that if there was a prize involved, perhaps the idea was worth considering after all. Besides, he reasoned that a level 5 bronze rift couldn't possibly be that dangerous, or so he hoped. He agreed to go, but he made it clear that he didn't actually need an epic beast for himself. Instead, he wondered if the chief instructor would be able to procure a few specific items for him. With that, he took a pen and paper from the table and began listing the materials required for Swan Bao's purification. He wrote down the chaos of Yin and Yang, the 10,000-year void, North Sea holy water, and Beichin star sand. Su Xian frowned as he read the list, admitting that out of all those rare items, he had only ever seen the Beichin star sand. It is a legendary material, and the Alliance currently keeps it under their strict protection. If you truly need it, I can request it as your reward for this mission, Su Xian offered. It was a deal he accepted without a moment's hesitation. First, he told himself, he had to secure that Beichin star sand. As for the other materials on the list, he would search for them calmly at a later time. Su Xian's eyes lit up with a sudden intensity, for there was clearly no time to lose. We must leave right now, he insisted, guaranteeing the boy would be back before the evaluation. 7 days would be more than enough time, and Su Xian, as we see, was a man of action. He took the boy by the arm and led him directly out of the monitoring room. The door swung open and Su Tinglan approached, but just as she was about to speak, Su Xian cut her off with a gesture. Leader Su, whatever it is you need, we shall discuss it when I return, he declared. For now, I am taking this young man with me. With those words, Su Xian waved his hand and summoned an imposing, giant fly. He helped the boy onto the fly's back, which beat its wings and soared high into the sky. They flew toward the horizon, moving with the staggering speed of a lightning bolt. It was the very first time he had ever ridden a flying beast, a memorable milestone, to be sure. And what's more, they were flying at such a dizzying altitude. Fortunately, he adapted to the situation quickly, showing a surprising amount of composure. He looked down and instinctively checked the information of this massive creature. Its name was the fly, the great fly of the iron forest, which is quite a literal name, if we are being honest. Its potential was immortal, and its level was at the 10th stage of the king rank. The boy was deeply impressed. It was certainly a beast worthy of the famous chief instructor Su. Meanwhile, we return to Nanyan City at the Lin family residence, where a desperate plea is made to save CNAI. Lin Yiting knelt on the living room floor, holding on to CNAI as if her life depended on it. Her father, Lin Dohin, sat nearby, calmly sipping tea from his cup as though he hadn't heard a single word. Seeing this cold indifference, Lin Yiting began to fall into utter despair. Father, she cried out, if you do not save him, I will kill myself right here and now. With those words, she pulled a sharp dagger from her clothes and pressed it against her own neck. Lin Duohin finally reacted, noting dryly that his daughter seemed to have grown wings of her own. But such threats, he informed her, simply do not work on a man like him. Then, he turned a cold, piercing gaze towards CNAI, who remained kneeling on the floor. He called him useless, a complete good-for-nothing who brought nothing to their family. Upon hearing those words, the anger CNAI had been suppressing for so long ignited instantly. His eyes became bloodshot and, in a sudden blur of motion, he snatched the dagger away from Lin Yiting. Without a word, he placed the blade against his own throat instead. Watching this display, Lin Duohin merely offered a cold, mocking sneer. He hadn't even blinked when his own daughter threatened her life, a harsh parenting style, to say the least. He certainly wasn't going to change his mind for a nobody like CNAI. CNAI didn't respond. In that moment, his expression was just as calm and resolute as the girl's. Lin Duohin stood his ground, insisting to the leader that he wasn't trying to force anyone's hand. I want to propose a deal, CNAI said, causing Lin Duohin to arch an eyebrow in curiosity. He was instantly intrigued. What kind of deal could a boy like him possibly offer? CNAI offered his own life in exchange for the leader of the Lin family taking action in the matter. Terrified, Lin Yiting lunged forward to snatch the dagger away, but she was quickly intercepted. A butler approached slowly and began to lead a protesting Lin Yiting out of the room. With her gone, Lin Duohin looked down at the young man kneeling on the floor with total indifference. He noted that the boy's life was worthless. Why should he cross a rising star of the Alliance for him? CNAI smiled mockingly, claiming he knew a secret that would definitely interest the leader. When asked what it was, he mentioned that the origin of the leader's turtle was unknown, and, without a doubt, that it was actually a cellular phone. CNAI looked up at Lin Duohin, his gaze steady and unwavering. His eyes were calm. It didn't matter if he lived or died, as long as he piqued the leader's interest. Immortality is certainly a tempting prize, but the risk involved was immense. Lin Duohin fell silent, simply staring at the boy as if weighing his worth. It seemed that CNAI's hatred for the man had finally transformed into his greatest strength. The dagger suddenly moved toward his throat, but it was deflected with a sharp, sudden blow. Lin Duohin's laughter began to resonate throughout the entire hall, a chilling sound, to be sure. He admitted the secret interested him and dismissed the other boy as a genius who hadn't matured yet. If they killed him, so be it. Hearing this, the kneeling CNAI lowered his head with a mocking smile. Deep down, he knew his brother was truly in trouble this time. The Thailand fly is incredibly fast, a marvel of speed, to be sure. A little later, a desolate plain that seemed to stretch on forever appeared before his eyes. The wind and sand covered everything in sight, blurring the world around them. From that height, he couldn't see clearly what lay on the ground below. But we can assume they had reached the border battlefield, right at the edge of the Alliance. By simply crossing the Great Protective Wall, they would see the legendary 36 rifts of the world. He whispered to himself while watching a blurry line emerge through the swirling wind and sand. Su Xian didn't let the Thailand fly slow down, continuing to fly steadily in another direction. This is a battlefield, after all, hardly a good place for a casual stay. He told the boy he would take him directly to the rift of the underworld. An hour later, the Thailand fly reached the entrance and stopped in the plaza of a military base. It was then that he noticed a boy and a girl standing near the plaza alongside the soldiers. Su Xian introduced them, starting with the girl, Su Xiao Xiao. She hailed from Pavin City and had taken second place in the entire alliance trials. Then there was Lei Yong, coming all the way from Kyoto, who ranked third in the alliance. Su Xian pointed toward our protagonist, but just as he began the introduction, he was interrupted. The young man told the instructor that there was really no need for introductions. They had already heard of him, the top-ranked Trepolas in the entire alliance. Su Xiao Xiao watched him with a look that was, to be honest, quite cunning. He, in turn, remained silent, carefully observing the two of them. The girl named Su Xiao Xiao had a small, ice-blue cat resting comfortably on her shoulder. It was surely her summoned beast, and after they exchanged polite greetings, he instinctively checked the cat's information. Its name was the Icebreaker Spirit Cat. It possessed an immortal aptitude and was currently at bronze level, rank 4. He then turned to greet Lei Yong, the young man who had come all the way from Kyoto. His summoned beast was a small bear, standing about half the height of an average person. This was the violent jade bear of Tengu, a thunder-type creature with an immortal aptitude, impressive, to say the least. Like the cat, it was also at bronze level, rank 4. Another immortal class. We should expect nothing less from the second and third-ranked students in the alliance. They had barely finished their greetings when Lei Yong shot him a sharp, sideways glance. It was a look filled with deep-seated distrust and perhaps a bit of resentment. He wondered how a poor kid from some forgotten village could have possibly surpassed him. In his mind, there was no doubt the boy must have cheated to reach such a high standing. To Lei Yong, the Trepola's rank was nothing more than pure garbage. It was only because Su Xian was standing right there that Lei Yong didn't dare to start a confrontation. Our protagonist saw everything, of course, but he chose not to give it any importance. As long as Lei Yong behaved himself, he decided everything would be just fine. Once this mission was over, they could each go their separate ways in peace. But if Lei Yong insisted on looking for trouble, then Xian Bao would be more than happy to teach him a lesson. But as we observe our protagonist, we see he has discovered something new. It turns out that all summoned beasts start with only 2 initial skills, while Xian Bao possesses 3. Perhaps this is simply because Xian Bao is a legendary summoned beast, a small detail that makes a world of difference. He rubbed his chin, lost in thought, when something caught his attention. Xian Bao nuzzled her head against his palm, as if to say, "Don't worry, master." The little creature seemed quite confident that she could take down any villain in their path. It seems the little one had also sensed Lei Yang's obvious discontent. Feeling satisfied, he gently stroked Xian Bao's small head. Su Xian, who had been watching from the side, spoke up again once the greetings were finished. He explained that they couldn't wait 7 days for the event at Tsinghua University. Time was of the essence, and the mission ahead was far too crucial to delay. The 3 of them nodded and followed Su Xian as they set off immediately. Soon, they arrived at a blue palace constructed entirely of shimmering spatial crystals. In the center of the palace, a 10-meter-high subdimensional fissure flickered, casting spatial fragments into the air. All around the hall, we see numerous staff members typing away at their computers. They were working tirelessly to monitor and control the stability of the surrounding space. Su Xian led the group directly to the front of the towering fissure. He told them that if they could find the core of this subworld, the Alliance could finally take control of the rift. The 3 were ready to step inside, but Su Xian stopped them for one final warning. The environment within this fissure is unique, and to be honest, the difficulty level is exceptionally high. He warned them that before their arrival, 8 other teams had already failed. If they failed as well, the Alliance would have no choice but to abandon the fissure and prepare to cede territory. But he told them not to feel too much pressure and to simply do what was within their reach. With that said, Su Xian pulled out 3 badges with a quick gesture and handed them over. He insisted that if things became truly difficult, they must retreat immediately. Su Xian looked around, knowing there was no more time to lose. He urged them to hurry and set off, promising he would be right there waiting for their triumphant return. Under the watchful gaze of everyone present, the 3 of them stepped into the subdimensional fissure. We see their figures vanish into the shimmering rift at the center of the palace. As they emerged on the other side, an intense sensation of weightlessness sent them plunging from a height of 100 meters. Below them, an infinite sea stretched out as far as the eye could see. He gave a quick nod to Xianbao, signaling the little creature to act. Instantly, a wave of blue water enveloped them, allowing them to land softly on the surface of the sea. Xianbao's Xianbu Jade supported them, which, quite conveniently, allowed them to walk right on top of the water. For Xiao Xiao, the situation was even easier to handle. She relied on her Icebreaker Spirit Cat to manage the descent. Being an ice attribute beast, it froze a section of the surface so she could simply stand on top of it. Only Lei Jiang had nothing to catch him. He fell into the sea with a loud splash and began to flail wildly. He cried out for help since he couldn't swim, and eventually, unable to watch him struggle, he asked Xian Bao to pull him out. Lei Zhang's expensive designer suit was completely soaked, hardly the heroic entrance he had likely imagined. His beast, the lightning jade bear leopard, had fur that looked as cold as ice. Its blue and brown fur was now plastered to its body, looking for all the world like it had been licked clean. Lei Jiang couldn't help but let out a loud sneeze. He shot him a strange look, calling him a pauper with a dismissive huff. He warned him not to expect any gratitude just because he had saved his life. Deep down, he still couldn't believe a nobody had managed to achieve an SSS rank. Xiao Xiao, however, couldn't understand why Lei Jiang had to be so incredibly hateful. Before he could even get a word in, she was the first one to snap. She reminded him quite sharply that if he hadn't been saved, he would have drowned by now. She called him out for being ungrateful, and Lei Jiang's face turned as red as a tomato. To be honest, he simply couldn't accept being labeled as someone without manners. He turned toward him, and, summoning all his courage, he gave a stiff bow. He muttered a quick thanks, insisting that he wasn't ungrateful at all. Watching the display, he couldn't help but let out a small laugh. So, we see that this is what the young masters of Kyoto are really like. It turns out they aren't just incredibly proud and full of themselves. They are also quite dramatic, which, naturally, makes for a very interesting dynamic. Still, he realized the boy didn't seem to be such a bad person after all. He was just a bit of a fool, really, so he gestured for him to stand up. And so, the three of them set off, walking across the water toward a small island in the distance. But we had barely taken a few steps when, quite suddenly, a giant wave 10 meters high loomed over us. Before we could even react, the wave swept us away and dragged us down into the depths of the sea. The ocean floor was completely dark, without even a single trace of light to be seen. He frowned, looking up toward the surface through the murky water. It was a good thing he had Xian Bao's shield protecting him. Otherwise, he realized, he would have surely drowned right then and there. He thought this as he swam upward, and soon after, Lei Yang and Su Xiaoxiao also slowly emerged at the surface. Lei Yang was fine thanks to his own shield, but poor Su Xiaoxiao's clothes were completely soaked through. She looked down at her hands, her face darkening with frustration at the situation. She hadn't brought a change of clothes, but at that moment, a spectral blue shield suddenly covered her. Just as Su Xiaoxiao turned to look, she discovered that the shield was actually absorbing the water from her clothes. In an instant, it had dried her off completely, a very convenient trick, to be honest. She quickly turned toward him and offered a sincere thank you and an apology. He simply waved his hand, gesturing for her not to give it a second thought. He told them not to waste any more time and that they should get moving immediately. Lei Yang took the lead, hurrying the group along as they regained their footing. And so, the three of them continued walking across the surface of the water. They headed toward the small island, keeping a sharp eye out in case another giant wave appeared. Soon, they encountered their first wave of beasts, 3 piranhas, each about the length of an arm. These were bloodthirsty fish, bronze level 3, and certainly not very friendly. Just as he was about to launch an attack, he was suddenly stopped in his tracks. Lei Yang lifted his chin with an air of confidence, as if his previous attempts hadn't failed him. He spoke of life and the difficulties ahead, though his words seemed a bit scattered in the moment. He focused his attention entirely on the path through the canyon. He frowned again as a major failure occurred, causing an explosion that left him shouting in disbelief. That, as we can see, was the main event of the confrontation. He allowed himself to be distracted by business, even though the matter was close to his heart. A deep and heavy silence followed, as if the words had already been spoken. He hoped for a bit of good luck, noticing that his gear was in perfect condition for the task. But Xian Bao's shield is only for one person, or do you really plan to fight alongside your bear? Lei Yang froze on the spot, while he gave a lopsided smile, curious to see what such a proud young man would choose. Lei Yang remained silent for 30 full seconds, thinking that while this young master had SSS level strength, it was only at 30%. He then asked, quite humbly, if he could also put a shield on his little bear. His sudden change in attitude was almost amusing, but since they had already lost too much time, he didn't plan to keep playing along. Little Xian Bao shook his head and used the Xianbu Jade to cover the electric Jade Violent Bear in a protective layer. The electric Jade Violent Bear beat its chest and charged forward, proving why it was ranked 3rd in the entire alliance. With 3 swift strikes, it annihilated the bloodthirsty fish, leaving behind 3 orbs of light that merged into the bear's body. After that, no matter what beast appeared, Lei Yang took care of them all, which was quite a relief, to be honest. But the rule of this secret realm is that the further we go, the stronger and more numerous the beasts become. After covering 60% of the way, they faced 5 bronze level 5 giant octopuses rising from the depths. Faced with the bronze level 5 giant octopus, Lei Yang finally stopped acting tough, as his electric Jade Violent Bear was only level 4. He turned to look at Su Xiaoxiao, admitting his little bear was a bit tired and asking her to help him out for a while. Lei Yang then looked at our protagonist and opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. After all, he had previously insisted they stay behind him. We see Lei Yang's face turn bright red with embarrassment, and honestly, it's hard to know whether to laugh or cry as he offers to take 3. He told the others to split the rest, rolling up his sleeves to advance with Xian Bao, but after 2 steps, Lei Yang stopped him. He told him not to be a fool or play the hero, but Su Xiao had finally reached her limit with his attitude. With her cheeks puffed out in anger, she snapped, asking if he was really nothing more than a loudmouth. She claimed his previous success was pure luck and told the protagonist not to listen to him, firmly stating her belief in them. As she finished speaking, Su Xiao rolled up her own sleeves, ready to fight Lei Yong. Her personality is quite direct, isn't it? If memory serves, she comes from Beibing Cheng, which explains that fiery northern personality she shares with Lei Yong. He hurried to stop Su Xiao before she could attack, reminding them that time was running out and they needed to finish the level. He gently patted Xian Bao's head and whispered that it was their turn to control the 3 remaining giant octopuses. Xian Bao obeyed, striking the sea surface with its powerful legs and activating its deep sea pressure ability. Not far away, the 3 giant octopuses that were about to strike suddenly paralyzed, their massive bodies frozen in place. He looked on in surprise, wondering how Xian Bao's pressure ability had suddenly become so incredibly powerful. Looking closely at Xian Bao, we see a blue water vapor enveloping her. She had indeed received a significant water attribute bonus. But it wasn't just the vapor. A second later, Xian Bao opened her small mouths and spat out a cloud of deep blue mist. The mist spread quickly, and after a harrowing roar, one of the giant octopuses was corroded into dust, falling into the sea. He gave Xian Bao the next order to target the second giant octopus, and of course, the beast wasn't going to just stand there. The giant octopus remained in the water, using its long tentacles to launch a fierce lunge, though we know it wasn't alone. They were easily blocked by Xian Bao's Xianbu shield, and in less than a minute, the 2 remaining giant octopuses were reduced to dust by the Taijin corrosion. Xian Bao's level immediately rose to bronze 6, and at the same time, the battles on the other side had also come to an end. The electric jade violent bear and the forest icebreaker cat also reached bronze level 5, which was quite a productive moment for everyone. He stood up and looked at Lei Yong with a half-smile, noting that they had finished off the demonic beasts there and asking if they should keep moving. Lei Yong shuddered completely, nervously suggesting that perhaps Brother Jian should be the one to lead the way this time. Seeing Lei Yang's hesitant attitude, he couldn't help but laugh out loud, asking if he still doubted his SSS rank or his actual strength. He teased him, wondering if he finally believed in him now, which, to be fair, was a question Lei Yong probably didn't want to answer. Su Xiao, as if fearing Lei Yong wasn't embarrassed enough, added fuel to the fire until Lei Yang's face swelled with rage. He snapped at her not to mention it again, and seeing that the 2 were about to fight once more, he quickly interrupted them to stop the bickering. He urged them to hurry and find the core of the underworld, and so the 3 of them approached the island, walking across the sea's surface. Soon, they were less than 500 meters away, and he could finally see what the island really looked like as it loomed before them. The island was about 2 kilometers in diameter and completely barren of trees, as the entire landmass was formed from a blue watercolored iron ore. As soon as he set his eyes on it, the information about the mineral appeared in his mind: Dingsin steel, or of immortal common quality. It was highly malleable and lightweight, capable of effectively resisting mental charm attacks, and the island was surrounded by a dense ring of reefs. Furthermore, the entire island was covered by a faint layer of light energy, confirming for them that the underworld core was indeed located here. Just as they were about to step onto the island, the entire surface of the sea suddenly began to ripple and surge. In the next instant, the countless reefs surrounding the island began to move, and crimson eyes appeared among the rocks as he reached out to stop the others. He warned them to wait, realizing those reefs were actually demonic beasts, and slowly, the creatures emerged from the water as a group of giant crocodiles. These beasts were 2 to 3 meters long, and soon the entire sea surface was crawling with them. At first glance, he estimated there were at least 30. And that wasn't all. Behind the main group was an even larger crocodile leader, one that was clearly far more dangerous than the rest. He first focused his gaze on the group of crocodiles, analyzing their information and learning they were bloodthirsty monsters at level bronze 6. Then he shifted his attention to the leader, whose data appeared before him, the bloodthirsty monster king, of immortal quality and level bronze 8. His pupils suddenly contracted. This was his first time facing a beast of immortal quality, and the pressure was unlike anything he had felt before. Lei Yin carefully backed up until he was at his side, whispering that the giant crocodile's aura felt remarkably similar to Pengxin's. He nodded, confirming that just like the Lei Yubei auction, this beast was of immortal quality, though it sat at a formidable level bronze 8. That put it 3 full levels above the Lei Yubei auction, a fact that made Lei Yin swallow hard as he stared at the creature's overwhelming presence. Su Xiao watched him as well, knowing that with their current strength, it would be impossible for the 2 of them to defeat the Monster King alone. At this point, their only hope was him, though even he wasn't entirely certain, despite Xian Bao's previous victory against a 2-level gap. The bloodthirsty Monster King was a different story, being 2 quality ranks higher than the rare quality spiny Pua bear they had faced before. Since Xian Bao was only level bronze 6, there was no guarantee she could overcome a level 8 king, but he decided he had to try anyway. he turned to his companions, asking if they could handle the other 30 bloodthirsty monsters while he focused on the leader. Lei Yin immediately promised that he and Xiao Xiao would do their absolute best to ensure he wasn't disturbed during the fight. With that settled, he and Xian Bao lunged directly toward the pack, with his sights locked firmly on the king while the others joined the fray. As they cleared the obstacles in their path, he commanded Xian Bao to use Taijin Xian Wu, and she leaped in front of the massive beast. She used the Xian Wu shield to block a powerful tail swipe before spitting a dark blue mist from her small mouth to envelop the king. After deploying the Taijin Xian Wu, Xian Bao immediately retreated to his side, and we see him frown as he waits for the results. A moment later, the mist dissipated, finally revealing the figure of the bloodthirsty monster king standing within the clearing. Incredibly, it was still very much alive. Aside from a few small corroded holes in its tail, it hadn't suffered any life-threatening damage. As expected of an immortal-level beast, it was proving to be a tough nut to crack, forcing him to let out a bitter laugh and stop Xian Bao's next charge. Xian Bao tilted her little head and looked at him in complete confusion, wondering why her master was holding her back from the fight. Xian Bao could certainly beat him, but for now, he kept his eyes locked on the king to prevent a surprise attack before whispering to her. He reminded her that her only real attack skill was Taijin Xian Wu, which, to be honest, wasn't doing much against this particular king. As she started to protest, he gently interrupted, telling her to stay calm and noting that there were plenty of other monsters around to use. The plan was simple. They would level up on the smaller ones first and then deal with the king, a strategy that made Xian Bao's eyes sparkle. She looked at him with pure admiration, calling him brilliant, while he gave her head a small pat and called out to his companions. He asked Su Xiaoxiao and Lei Yin to help him hold off the king for a moment while he took Xian Bao to gain some experience. In an instant, Lei Yin and Xiaoxiao repositioned themselves by his side, ready to take over the heavy lifting without any complaints. Lei Yin noted that while his fat bear might not defeat this smelly crocodile, he could certainly keep it busy for a while. We see the excitement in Lei Yan's eyes. He was clearly more than anxious to jump back into the fray. Su Xiaoxiao, ever the silent professional, simply ordered her ice-breaking spirit cat to intercept the bloodthirsty monster king. And that is exactly how an ice goddess is supposed to act, isn't it? He gave a quick nod of approval, turned around, and lunged with Xian Bao toward the main group of monsters. Even though Xian Bao was only bronze level 6, in the middle of that swarm, she was nothing short of a beast. Suddenly, the pressure effect of the deep-sea abyss was activated, weighing down on everything in the vicinity. Every monster within range of the skill was instantly paralyzed, rendered completely unable to move even a single inch. Seizing the moment, Xian Bao opened both of her small mouths and prepared to unleash her power. Her black ice tortoise attack launched forward with incredible speed and precision. The attack struck with such force that it directly corroded the monsters, literally turning them into dust where they stood. Orbs of light and pure energy began to flow steadily into Xian Bao's head as the monsters fell. After defeating 5 of the creatures, Xian Bao finally, at long last, ascended to the next level of the bronze rank. And in that moment, her aura became significantly more powerful. This horde of bloodthirsty demons was, for all intents and purposes, an inexhaustible fountain of experience. But just then, a giant wave suddenly rose from the middle of the sea. The wave was at least 10 meters high, a daunting sight for anyone, really. He shouted a warning to Xian Bao, his face tight with sudden anguish. But Xian Bao, as if she hadn't heard a single word, lunged directly into the towering wave. In the blink of an eye, the massive wall of water swallowed Xian Bao whole. He began to panic, nearly throwing himself into the sea after her. However, Su Xiaoxiao reached out and stopped him with a firm hand. She told him to calm down, explaining that Xian Bao was perfectly fine and simply experiencing an elemental resonance. Little by little, he began to relax as he saw the wave form into a perfect sphere of water around her. He wondered what elemental resonance even was, as he couldn't recall ever hearing of such a thing. Su Xiaoxiao, seeing that he was finally composed, turned her gaze back toward the water sphere. We see a flicker of envy in her eyes as she watched the phenomenon unfold. She explained that elemental resonance occurs when a beast creates a deep, spiritual bond with a specific environment. It is a rare state that can effectively double the damage of all their attacks. His pupils contracted suddenly as the weight of those words hit him. It seemed that elemental resonance was far more powerful than he had ever imagined. Su Xiaoxiao continued her explanation, though she couldn't quite hide the longing in her voice. Only beasts with immortal potential or higher have even a slight chance of activating it, which, naturally, explains everything. Every time it activates, it leaves a permanent elemental mark deep within their core. This significantly increases the chances of the beast triggering elemental resonance again in the future. Su Xiaoxiao then asked if Xian Bao was a water attribute, which, of course, she already knew. He nodded in confirmation, realizing that this explained everything that was happening. Many people, even after reaching the prestigious Diamond King rank, have never managed to achieve a single elemental resonance. And yet, here was Xian Bao, accomplishing it while still being a mere bronze rank. Su Xiaoxiao then jokingly asked to buy her, even offering to introduce him to her older sister in exchange. His eyes widened like saucers at the sheer absurdity of the proposal. He stared at Su Xiaoxiao in complete disbelief, wondering if she was actually serious. He couldn't help but wonder what kind of strange ideas were swirling around in that girl's head. Did she really want to sell out her own sister? Though, naturally, he did wonder if the sister was pretty. Just then, the sphere of water and waves began to dissolve, finally revealing Xian Bao at its center. The sight surrounding her was, to be perfectly honest, nothing short of incredible. Currents of water were coiling around her body like ethereal serpents, shimmering in the light. Her aura had also become far more powerful than it had ever been before. Lei Jiang suddenly shouted out, asking Jiang He if he was ready because he couldn't hold on much longer. It was a desperate cry that cut through the sound of the crashing waves. He immediately rushed back with Xian Bao to face the formidable evil king and Sui once again. On the battlefield, Lei Yu, the violent bear, and the ice-breaking spirit cat were already badly wounded by Sui's jaws. He quickly told Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao to withdraw their jade beasts from the front lines. Xian Bao, are you ready? We hear him ask, as her eyes shimmer with excitement, clearly eager to test her newfound strength. Master, Xian Bao is ready, she seemed to signal. Go ahead then, Xian Bao. This time, turn that smelly crocodile into mush. Upon hearing the command, Xian Bao charged directly toward the formidable evil king and Sui. With a single stomp of her front paw, she activated the grievous sea pressure, instantly suppressing her enemy's speed. The evil king and Sui watched her charge and immediately counterattacked with a piercing, freezing bite, his massive teeth snapping down with all the strength he could muster. But he couldn't even manage to pierce through the water wave shield of her domain. His strength was torn apart, and the evil king and Sui found himself completely overwhelmed as Xian Bao seized the opening to spit out a dark blue mist that enveloped him. From deep within that thick mist, the harrowing screams of the evil king echoed across the water. When the mist finally cleared, nothing remained on the surface of the sea but a pile of crocodile bones. Once again, she had used a single attack to annihilate an 8th-level bronze immortal. The evil king and Sui, Lei Jiang muttered, completely breathless from the sight. His pupils contracted suddenly in sheer shock. And in that moment, a startling realization began to take shape in his mind. Was it actually possible that Jiang He Xian Bao belonged to the legendary class? He watched Jiang He stroking Xian Bao's chin. He wanted to ask, but he simply didn't dare to. Very well done, Xian Bao, he praised, as the water serpents coiled around her body finally dissipated. The powerful effect of the elemental resonance had finally come to an end. The remaining hordes of Ensui monsters, seeing their king defeated, fled in absolute terror. They vanished into the depths of the sea, desperate to escape the same fate as their king. Jiang He looked toward the island that now sat so close to them. Come on, let's head up to the island, he suggested, ready to finally step onto solid ground. Over the next few hundred meters, we see that they didn't encounter a single other demonic beast. It seemed that the evil king and Sui had indeed been the final obstacle in their path. Upon reaching the shore, he reached down and struck the strange steel that covered the island. It was Inxening steel, and to be honest, it seemed to be absolutely everywhere. This must be it, the famous Inxening steel the instructor told us so much about, right? Lei Jiang spoke as he picked up a fragment of the metal, weighing it carefully in his hand. That's the one. Now, quickly, let's find the core of this underworld. He led Xian Bao further inland, heading toward the very heart of the island. Aside from the ground being paved in Inxening steel, there was nothing else to be seen. He continued his search across the metallic landscape. And there, right in front of them, sat a massive mining cave. Through that opening, one could dig deeper to find even higher quality steel hidden within. He leaned over, peering cautiously into the dark mouth of the cave. And indeed, he spotted the faint, shimmering glow of blue crystals. All the luminous energy surrounding the island seemed to originate from those very crystals. Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao came running over to join him at the edge. They stared at the blue crystals inside the cave, clearly anxious to head inside. He felt ready and was just about to jump in, but Lei Jiang stopped him with a firm hand. Jiang He, let me handle these things, he said, taking charge of the situation. You just wait up here. And with that, Lei Jiang jumped directly into the cave. Jiang He simply smiled and didn't stop him. After all, he was more than happy to let someone else do the heavy lifting. A little later, Lei Jiang returned with a blue crystal and handed it over to him. He looked down at the underworld core resting in his hand, curious about its power. But just as he was about to check its properties, the blue crystal suddenly exploded in a blinding light. It enveloped the three of them in an instant, and to be honest, he didn't even have time to react. Suddenly, a distant, echoing voice began to resonate in his ears. The trial of the secret realm has concluded, the voice announced solemnly. Initiating the calculation of results. Final evaluation underway. Jiang He received a triple S rank, while Lei Jiang was awarded an S rank. Su Xiaoxiao also earned an S rank, and immediately after, a beam of light descended from the heavens. And so, the three of them were wrapped in a dazzling column of golden light. Three objects slowly materialized before him as a mechanical voice spoke directly into his mind. You have obtained the necklace of the Holy Water Blessing, legendary grade. You have obtained the formula of the Spring of Life, legendary grade. You have obtained the Energy Fruit, legendary grade. Meanwhile, two objects also appeared in front of Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao. You have obtained the Helm of Seduction, epic grade. The voice continued. You have obtained the Energy Fruit, epic grade. The voice concluded. He reached out and pulled the three items from the column of light, his eyes immediately fixing on the water blue necklace. The name, Necklace of the Holy Water Blessing. Its effect was specifically designed for pets of legendary aptitude. When equipped, it increases the damage of water attribute skills by a staggering 50%. As he read the description of the Holy Water Necklace, his breathing began to quicken with excitement. We see the light energy surge as the blue glow intensifies. A 50% boost to water damage is no small thing. With this necklace in his possession, facing second-level enemies from now on would be a walk in the park. As one might expect from a triple S rank reward, the prizes were truly generous, extravagant even. As for the other two objects, their names alone told the whole story. The formula of the Spring of Life allows for the creation of a legendary grade life spring. It has the power to completely heal every single wound of a sacred pet. The final item was a fruit that looked remarkably like a common peach. This energy fruit, if consumed by someone below silver rank, can instantly increase their level by 2 full ranks. If Xian Bao, who is currently at the 7th level, eats it, his level will jump directly to the 9th. He took the energy fruit in his hand and turned to look at Xian Bao. Then, with a careful motion, he split the fruit right down the middle. He held one piece up to the little turtle's mouth and the other to the mouth of the black snake. He told them to eat up quickly, and to be honest, Xian Bao was already drooling in anticipation. Both heads leaned in and devoured the energy fruit in a single, enthusiastic bite. They devoured it in great gulps, and after swallowing the energy fruit, their level shot up like a roller coaster, rising 2 ranks instantly, finally coming to a stop at bronze, 9th level. And our protagonist's level also reached bronze, 9th level. He laughed out loud with pure excitement, and who could blame him, really? He took out the holy water necklace and carefully placed it around Xian Bao's neck. Xian Bao's aura strengthened significantly in an instant. He stood up, thinking that now that he had the formula for the Spring of Life, he could try to craft it and then sell it. If he remembered correctly, cultivation elixirs like the Spring of Life fetched ridiculously high prices. Meanwhile, we see that Lei Yin and Xiao Xiao had also finished distributing their own rewards. The Thunder Jade Leopard Bear and the Ice-Breaking Spirit Cat, after eating the epic grade energy fruit, also rose to bronze. 6th level. Seeing that they had already organized their prizes, he slowly approached them. The mission was over, and it was finally time to head back. He lifted the underworld core, prepared to teleport them all out of there. But suddenly, Lei Yin interrupted him. He looked incredibly nervous, his face turning completely red. He told Zhang He that if he ever came to Kyoto, he absolutely had to look him up. Xiao Xiao immediately scolded him, asking if he had a screw loose or something. To be honest, she didn't see the need for such a dramatic farewell. She reminded him that Zhang He would also be attending Tsinghua University, wouldn't he? He would see him there anyway, so why the fuss? Does the young master of the Lei family actually plan on skipping the exam? She teased. Lei Yin fell silent, suddenly finding himself completely at a loss for words. He simply scratched the back of his neck, looking thoroughly embarrassed. In that case, Jiang He, I'll see you at Tsinghua University, he finally managed to say. To be honest, this boy Lei Yin was proving to be quite the character. Jiang He nodded back calmly. I'll see you at Tsinghua University. And with that, the silhouettes of the three of them vanished from the island in an instant. Meanwhile, back at the Space Palace, we see a stunned silence. What's happening? Are you seeing this? The massive blue screen suddenly illuminates with a brilliant golden light. What level is this fissure? Someone asks, their voice trembling slightly. Wu Xian takes a deep breath and looks directly at the palace manager. Bronze, an extreme immortal fissure, which was practically unheard of. Wu Xian's heart begins to pound against his chest with incredible force. Containing his excitement as best he can, he quickly pulls out his phone and makes an encrypted call. On the other end of the line, the voice of a middle-aged man answers. The Chongkong secret domain was already fully operational and active. Alliance Control immediately summons the entire Chongcheng army to their posts to protect the nation's Great Wall. They must pay special attention to the movements of the Cube clan. Wu Xian hangs up, his expression turning grave. This secret domain before him is already under Alliance control, and the Cube clan won't take long to find out. This year, the world still belongs to the Alliance, but our rivals remain the Cube clan, those demons who will undoubtedly try every means possible to destroy this secret domain. After all, for the Cube clan, this domain represents a lethal suppression. Meanwhile, outside the palace, four figures suddenly burst in, shouting to protect the wall. Wu Xian orders them to defend the nation's Great Wall, then turns and leaves the palace under the subspace fissure's brilliant golden light. We return to the Space Palace with the three of them, where Jiang He looks around, feeling quite confused by the sudden commotion. The palace manager rushes toward them, relieved they finally emerged, explaining that the inner demon clan is causing trouble again outside the Great Wall. The general has already gone to help, but before leaving, he left instructions to find someone to escort our trio back safely. As for the promised reward, they must wait until this chaos ends, and then he will find them at Tsinghua University. Jiang, he simply nods. He isn't in a hurry to use the Beichin star-slaying technique just yet, so he hands the subspace core to the manager for safekeeping. The manager takes the core and signals to the door, where 3 soldiers enter to escort them back from the facility. Upon arriving back in the city, he plans to return to his hotel to rest, having spent everything he had to rent a room for a week. Just as he reaches his door, a hand suddenly stops the handle he was turning, a hand possessing incredible, unexpected strength. He frowns and leaps back. Neither he nor Enai Shuangbao had sensed that a stranger was following them through the city. He looks seriously at the owner of that hand, a young man who seems to have appeared out of nowhere after their return to the city. The soldiers who escorted them are gone, and he realizes with a start that they were being shadowed without even noticing it. He stares intently at the young man, trying to gauge the strength of this mysterious stranger who has blocked his path. It seems his quiet return to the city wasn't going to be as peaceful as he had hoped. He had intended to simply head back to his hotel, but now he finds himself facing an unexpected confrontation right at his doorstep. He watches the young man with a grave expression, wondering how someone could have followed them so closely without being detected by his senses. The stranger stands firm, and Jiang he realizes that this isn't just a random encounter, but a deliberate move by someone quite skilled. The young man speaks, revealing he was sent by someone to teach Jiang he a little lesson, a classic case of looking for trouble. By what right? Jiang he thinks, instantly putting distance between them as he prepares for whatever comes next. By the looks of it, this fellow named Bisonin doesn't have the best intentions, and to make matters worse, he's a silver-level beastmaster. He tells Swan Bao that he isn't sure they can win this one, as it seems they've provoked the wrong person. Bisonin speaks with a calm arrogance while slowly removing his white gloves. He reaches down to stroke the head of his lethal spider, a charming pet, if you like that sort of thing. But he tells Jiang he not to worry. His boss said he can't take his life, so he'll settle for leaving him crippled instead. As long as Jiang he is unable to participate in the upcoming evaluation, that will be more than enough to satisfy them. Jiang he clenches his fists, struggling to suppress the white-hot anger burning deep inside him. He realizes he needs to squeeze more information out of this man to discover who the boss behind Bisonin actually is. He has to find out. Otherwise, even if he escapes today, they will simply continue to conspire against him in the future. He takes a deep breath to calm his nerves, trying to force himself to think with absolute clarity. He searches through every one of his memories, yet finds no record of his former self ever provoking someone of such high status. So, he wonders, who would go to the trouble of sending a professional after him? Aside from that miserable Hyanai, there shouldn't be anyone else who holds such a deep grudge against him, or so he thought. Furthermore, since he only returned to Nanyan a few minutes ago, it should have been impossible for anyone to know his location. And yet, Bisonin found him immediately, having tracked him from the moment he was dropped off at his door. This can only mean that the boss behind Bisonin holds an incredibly high status within Nanyan City, which is a troubling thought indeed. In all of Nanyan, someone with that kind of power, aside from the city lord, would be quite rare. Only the families of the most powerful factions would possess such far-reaching capabilities. His blood runs cold as a realization dawns on him. He believes he finally knows who is pulling Bisonin's strings. In the entire city of Nanyan, only the Lin family fits the bill, though for now, it remains a very dangerous suspicion. We see Jiang he staring directly into Bisonin's rather foolish face, searching for any sign of a crack. I have it now, he says. The Lin family sent you, didn't they? At that moment, Bisonin's expression turns rigid, his composure beginning to crumble. He avoids eye contact, nervously rubbing his hands and touching his nose, classic signs of a man caught off guard. Jiang he lets out a malicious little laugh, realizing he has struck a nerve. It seems those psychology classes on micro-expressions he secretly watched in his past life were actually worth something after all. Bisonin enters an immediate state of panic the moment the question hangs in the air. He can't believe it. He wonders how on earth this boy could have possibly known the truth. There is something very strange about this brat, and the thought sends Bisonin spiraling into a complete frenzy. Deep down, he knows his beloved Su'er is still in the hands of the Lin family. If he allows this boy to expose the Lins to the city lord, Su'er will be in grave danger, a risk he cannot take. He decides right then and there that he simply cannot let this boy leave the alley alive. Brat, he snarls, you are practically begging for death. Bisonin stops pretending to be a gentleman as his fury skyrockets beyond his control. He adjusts his gold-rimmed glasses, and his gaze turns into something cold and predatory. He falls silent, his entire being radiating a murderous intent as he commands his lethal spider to use its blood frenzy. The creature's 2 front legs are already stained with fresh blood, though from where, we can only guess. Upon hearing the order, the beast lunges toward Jiang he in an instant. As he watches the monster approach, Jiang he merely lets out a cold, confident laugh. It appears this arrogant fellow has been driven mad by the sheer embarrassment of being found out. As we see the lethal spider lunging toward him, Jiang He quickly orders Xian Bao to activate the Xianbu Jade. Xian Bao leaps in front of him, and in an instant, a wave of dark blue water envelopes him completely. Upon the surface of the shield, several water serpents begin to coil and swim, a truly impressive sight. This is the effect of the Bu Sacred Water Necklace, a rather handy tool for such a dire situation. The effect activates just in time, as the lethal spider is incredibly fast and reaches Xian Bao in a heartbeat. Its blood-stained front legs strike the shield, managing to pierce through it almost instantly. But fortunately, Xian Bao manages to hold his ground and successfully blocks the spider's vicious attack. Bisonen's pupils contract in shock as he watches the impact, and he can't help but take a sharp breath of cold air. He can't believe that a mere bronze-rank turtle could actually block a strike fueled by blood frenzy. After all, this isn't just a simple difference of 2 levels they are talking about. It also includes the massive power gap that comes with reaching the silver rank. In that moment, Bisonen feels as though the world has become completely nonsensical. At the same time, Jiang He's own expression turns somber as he assesses the damage. The creature is certainly worthy of the silver rank, having broken Xian Bao's jade defense with a single blow. Against a bronze rank, Xian Bao could have easily overcome a 2-level gap and annihilated an excellent great opponent. But here, against a silver-tier beast, Xian Bao stands little chance of victory, even with the Bu necklace. Still, simply keeping the beast busy is enough, as the commotion they are making is far from quiet. The hotel will soon notice the lack of water and call the police, leaving Bisonen with nowhere to run. It appears that Bisonen has come to the very same realization. He knows he must complete his grim mission immediately, or risk losing everything. Duo men attack, he screams. Use the 1,000-army thrust and skewer him. He wants nothing more than to see this brat dead once and for all. Bisonen's expression has turned truly monstrous, twisted by a desperate rage. There is absolutely nothing left of his previous facade as a refined gentleman. Upon hearing the command, the Donin spider leaps into the air in an instant. Its 8 spider legs snap outward like coiled springs, ready to strike. They lunge forward, aiming to stab directly through poor Xian Bao. Seeing the danger, Jiang He orders Xian Bao to act without a second's delay. Xian Bao watches the spider midair and slams his front paws against the ground. The sound that follows is strange, as if he were stepping directly onto water. Suddenly, the crushing pressure of the abyssal sea envelopes the entire battlefield. The Donin spider feels as though a mountain has dropped on it, falling straight from the sky. Furthermore, its movement speed is instantly reduced by more than 10-fold. Jiang He hadn't expected Xian Bao's abyssal sea pressure to be quite this potent. Even a Baiyun-level beast like the Donin spider is unable to withstand it. Xian Bao now, he calls out. Use the supreme In Xianbu. Xian Bao opens his 2 small mouths, and a dark blue mist begins to pour out. The mist instantly swirls around the Donin spider, pinning it to the floor. Jiang He stares at the thick fog, his expression unreadable as the tide turns. The spider struggles to rise from the ground, a sight Jiang He certainly didn't expect to see. On the ground, we see a white ball completely wrapped in spider silk. It seems that before the mist could cover it, the Donin spider used its own webs to shield itself. As it turns out, the supreme In Xianbu was unable to corrode the creature through that barrier. Bisonen let out a sigh of relief, silently praising the spider for its quick thinking. He simply couldn't believe that his beast had almost been defeated by that cursed turtle. The thought of losing to such a creature was, to be honest, quite insulting to him. He glared at Jiang He with pure ferocity and raised his hand to order the Donin spider to attack once more. But just at that moment, a sudden, sharp shout echoed from the top of the second-floor stairs. A command to freeze rang out, and in the blink of an eye, more than 10 soldiers rushed down the steps. They completely surrounded Bisonen, and the already narrow hotel hallway was instantly packed with people. Bisonen looked around at the dozens of soldiers closing in on him from every side. His heart skipped a beat as he realized that, for him, the game was finally up. In that tense silence, the voice of a woman was heard coming from the stairs once again. With a tone of utter indifference, she asked how they dared to cause such trouble in her jurisdiction. She noted they must have a death wish. Hearing that familiar voice, Jiang He turned to see who it was. We see the city chief, Su Tinglan, slowly appearing before the gathered crowd. Jiang He certainly hadn't expected her to show up here in person. Now that Su Tinglan is on the scene, we can be sure the truth will soon come to light. The big question remains, who is the person really pulling the strings behind Bisonen? Su Tinglan walked over to Jiang He and fixed her gaze sternly on Bisonen. A rogue soldier, she demanded to know who the mastermind behind this was. The moment Bisonen saw Su Tinglan, his heart seemed to stop dead in his chest. Deep down, he knew that he was completely and utterly finished. But before they could seize him, it appeared he had already prepared a final way out. Bisonen stared fixedly at Jiang He, and in the next instant, the Donin spider suddenly raised its blood-stained front legs. Without a second of hesitation, it drove them directly into its own master's heart. Bai Sinan collapsed onto the floor, his body going limp instantly. Just a few seconds later, his heart gave its final beat and stopped forever. And in the very moment its master died, the Donan spider followed suit. It simply stopped breathing. Jiang He looked down at Bai Sinan, who was now quite dead. He frowned, realizing that things were about to become far more complicated. With Bai Sinan gone, there was no longer a way to find proof of the Lin family's involvement. And so, it seemed the Lin family had managed to get away with it once again. The thought of Jinai made Jiang He want to hunt him down right then, along with that traitorous dog. He had never imagined the Lin family would actually send an assassin just for Jinai's sake. However, after this incident, he suspected Jinai and the Lins wouldn't try anything for a while. As for Jiang he had to leave for the Starfire University entrance exam in just 2 days. His next opportunity for justice would simply have to wait until his return. Only then would he finally be able to claim the revenge he sought. He thought of Jinai, his dear little brother, and what was coming for him. Since things have turned out this way, he decided his dear brother could be allowed to live just a little longer. The messy business with Bai Sinan was finally over. Afterward, Su Tinglan led him directly back to the city lord's mansion. The moment they arrived, he simply collapsed from exhaustion. For the first time since arriving in this world, he was finally able to get a decent night's sleep. Until now, he had been constantly occupied, either with the rookie trials or scouring battlefields for secret techniques. The following morning, we see him following the housekeeper to his seat in the dining room. As he walked in, Su Tinglan caught his eye and offered him a rather mocking little smile. She asked if he had slept well, and he could only offer a simple nod in response. Su Tinglan watched the young man as he began his breakfast, noting his unusual calm. She remarked that he didn't seem nervous at all, wondering if he truly felt that confident about tomorrow's entrance exam. He froze for a moment, actually taking the time to consider her question. He admitted that he was nervous, as anyone in his position would be, really. However, if the exam was strictly about fighting, then yes, he felt quite confident indeed. Upon hearing that, Su Tinglan couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle. She warned him that the entrance exam involved much more than just simple combat. If that was his only strategy, she noted, he certainly wouldn't be taking the first-place spot. That statement left him completely stunned, and he turned to look at Su Tinglan in surprise. Deep down, he realized that to actually win the top rank in such an exam, fighting alone would never be enough, which, naturally, made things much more interesting. A truly competent summoner, she explained, must be more than just capable. One must not only be exceptional in the heat of combat, but also master the art of improvisation. A candidate needs a balanced development in secondary professions and various other disciplines. He didn't understand a single word of it, but just as he was about to ask for clarification, Su Tinglan's phone suddenly rang. She answered the call, her voice sharp as she asked what was happening. It seemed the rift had spiraled out of control once again. Su Tinglan stood up abruptly, a look of pure fury crossing her face. She ordered them to secure the perimeter, promising to be there immediately. With that, Su Tinglan hung up the phone. Frowning, she told him he would have to explore on his own today. She had urgent business to attend to, and he simply nodded in understanding. He wondered aloud if this was the new rift that had opened in Nanyan. It was, and Su Tinglan felt a headache coming on just thinking about it. 6 months had already passed, and they still hadn't been able to bring that rift under control. And to make matters worse, as if they weren't bad enough, it was now destabilizing like this. Having said her piece, she turned and marched out of the dining room. He watched her silhouette disappear, remaining silent as she left. He had also heard the rumors regarding that particular rift in Nanyan. It had appeared the previous year, yet they had never managed to stabilize it. Word was that the rift's power had already reached the formidable diamond rank. The following morning, we see Su Tinglan return, her face etched with a look of pure exhaustion. She glanced at the small group gathered in front of the mansion without a word and immediately summoned a floral spirit bird for flight. It carried them away, flying from the city of Nanyan toward the capital. This time, there were 4 people in total heading to the exam, including our young protagonist. The other 3, 2 boys and a girl, were also from Nanyan High, though he didn't recognize any of them. Master Su, how is the situation with the rift? He approached her side and asked the question in a low, respectful voice. Su Tinglan rubbed her throbbing temples and let out a heavy sigh of resignation. The chaos had been contained, but due to the disturbances, the rift simply could not be brought under control. The rift had ascended to yet another level, a fact that made him sigh deeply as well. After all, it was now diamond rank, a terrifying prospect by any standard. Deep down, he wanted to help, but he knew he lacked the power to do anything about it. 3 hours later, they successfully arrived at the Alliance Center in Kyoto. Su Tinglan dropped the 4 of them off at the entrance of Tsingwu University and hurried away to attend to her duties. Upon arrival, the group split up. The test was individual, so there was no need to look for companions. Just then, a noise caught his attention, and he heard a familiar voice calling out from behind him. It was Su Xiao, walking toward him and calling out the name Jian. She remarked on how long it had been, and before he could even react, she turned to introduce a man in his 40s. The man stood nearly 7 feet tall, possessing a truly imposing set of muscles. They were so massive, in fact, that they looked ready to burst right through his shirt sleeves. Su Xiao led the man over and cheerfully introduced him to Jian. "This is my father, Su Yong-san," she announced with a bright smile. Jian hurried to greet him, offering a respectful, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Su." Su Yong-san wore a smile on his face, but his aura radiated pure, unyielding authority. "So, you are the Alliance's #1 and Xiao Xiao's friend, aren't you? Well then, let me give you a fair warning," the man continued. He explained that the Tsingwu University entrance exam was nothing like the trials in Nanyang. It wasn't simply a matter of defeating everyone to rack up points. Even you will have to give your absolute all if you want a chance at first place. Jian simply nodded his head, maintaining his composure despite the heavy atmosphere. Both Su Tinglan and Su Yong-san had now warned him about what lay ahead. It was becoming clear that this test was going to be anything but easy. He wondered what kind of exam it could be as he felt the pressure beginning to mount. "You've already started scaring him again," Su Xiao huffed, scolding her father for his intimidating tone. Upon seeing her reaction, Su Yongsan couldn't help but give a lopsided grin. All right, I won't say another word," he conceded. He told Xiao to stay close to Jian and to do her very best on the test. "I'm off," he said, and with that, Su Yongsan turned and departed. In that moment, we hear an excited shout from behind Jian's back. "I missed you so much," we hear, as Lei Yang comes running toward us at full speed. He immediately pulls Jian into a massive bear hug. "Young Lei, is that you?" "So, this is the famous Jian you've been raving so much about," a voice interrupts. The speaker appears to be another young master, followed closely by more than 10 loyal attendants. Hearing another wealthy heir like himself, Lei Yang turns around to handle the introductions. "This is the #1 from the Alliance I told you about," Lei Yang explains proudly. "This is Jian, the one with the SSS rank." Then he turns back to Jian. "And this is Wu Ao-tian, the young heir to Benai Real Estate in Kyoto. He's also a friend I hang out with whenever I'm here in the city." Jian says nothing, noticing that from the moment Wu Ao-tian arrived, his entire group has been casting looks of pure disdain. They stare at him intensely, as if they aren't even looking at a human being, but rather at a disgusting rat. Jian extends his hand to be polite, but he sees Wu Ao-tian pull a face. "SSS rank, you say? How dazzling. But the one thing Tsingwu University has too many of is poor devils like you from forgotten villages. You're just a stinking beggar. You really think you can be #1 looking like that? I can't wait to see you fall flat on your face." Wu Ao-tian's gaze is filled with nothing but pure, unadulterated arrogance. "Wu Ao-tian, what the hell do you think you're saying?" Before Jian can even think of a response, Lei Yang explodes in a fit of rage. With a fierce look in his eyes, he demands an explanation from Wu Ao-tian. The great instructor himself had nothing but praise for Jian Lin. So, he suggests that Wu Ao-tian had better wash his mouth out before speaking about him again. Or what? Does Wu Ao-tian actually dare to question the judgment of the great instructor? It was obvious that Wu Ao-tian didn't expect Lei Yang to turn against him for the sake of this stinking beggar, to essentially declare war on him, just like that, without a second thought. And we must remember that, in their group of juniors, Wu Ao-tian was the undisputed leader. He asks Lei Yang how he could possibly dare to speak to him in such a tone. He mocks him, suggesting that taking third place in the alliance has clearly gone to his head. And as for Jian Lin, even if he did come in first, who knows what dirty tricks he used to get there. Besides, what does it matter if he really is a genius? The alliance has more geniuses than it knows what to do with. They are a dime a dozen. Lei Yang's eyes were bloodshot with rage, and he was about to snap back, but Jian stopped him with a hand. Not a single word that Wu Ao-tian had just spat out managed to actually make Jian angry. On the contrary, he found the whole display rather ridiculous. He clarifies, "Wu Ao-tian of Benai Real Estate in Kyoto, right?" Jian flashed a standard, polite smile, without the slightest trace of anger in his expression. When Wu Ao-tian met those eyes, calm as still water, his heart skipped a beat. But he didn't like that feeling, so he brushed it off. What was this little beggar even thinking? He asks if Jian has a problem with what was said, and if he wants to try and contradict him. Jian simply laughed coldly and shook his head, which, to be honest, was the most insulting response possible. Arguing, after all, is a pastime reserved for the weak and the incompetent. He had no intention of stooping to that level, simply asking if Wu Ao-tian was finally finished with his nonsense. If that was the case, he politely suggested that the other man simply get out of his way. He was blocking the path, and one of the lackeys nearby couldn't help but complain about such arrogance. The man claimed he couldn't stand it anymore, begging Boss Wu to let him teach the boy a lesson. The henchman standing behind Wu Ao-tian was clearly reaching his breaking point. Seeing that the group was on the verge of attacking, Jian Lin merely let out a cold, quiet laugh. To him, they were just a bunch of Kyoto juniors with absolutely no real ambition. He knew that with a single Shin Bao, he could likely wipe out the entire pack of them. Fortunately for everyone involved, Wu Ao-tian was actually a rather clever fellow. He reached out his hand, signaling for his followers to stand down and stop their advance. He gave Jian one long, hard look before turning around and walking away with his subordinates. And right at that moment, the imposing toll of a great bell echoed through the air. The entrance exam for Tsinghua University had officially begun. A middle-aged man wearing sunglasses stepped out from the university gates. He carried an imposing aura, and instantly, the murmurs of the massive crowd fell silent. He introduced himself as Bai Feng, the chief examiner for this particular trial. His voice wasn't loud, yet it reached the ears of every person present with perfect clarity. Time was up, and he curtly commanded the group to follow him inside. Without wasting another breath on useless words, Bai Feng turned and led the way into Tsinghua University. The 1,000 hopeful applicants followed him immediately, moving as a single, silent mass. No one said a word, as the tension floating in the air was truly suffocating. They walked for more than half an hour before finally reaching the site of the exam. It was a massive plaza, and all around it, we see 79 distinct combat arenas. But the strange thing was that every single arena already had a stage set up within it. He wondered why there were arenas at all, and if they were meant to compete against each other for the rankings. Someone in the crowd voiced that very doubt, speaking for the rest of the nervous group. By then, Bai Feng had already climbed onto a high platform to address them. The first trial, he announced, would be to measure their actual combat power. However, it wouldn't be against one another, as he pointed toward the figures already standing in the arenas. Those individuals, as it turned out, were actually their upperclassmen from the senior years. They would serve as the 9 champions for this first stage of the trial. Each applicant would have to choose one of them and challenge them right there in the arena. If they could last 3 minutes without being defeated, they would pass the exam. Of course, during the test, the arena champions would also suppress their own power levels. They would make sure not to exceed the white cloud level during the duration of the fight. The strength of their suppressed levels would correspond to the numbers 9 through 1. The stronger the champion they chose to face, the more points they would earn if they succeeded. Having said that, Bai Feng took a slow, deliberate look around at the gathered students. And finally, his eyes came to rest directly on Jianlin, the first SS rank in the entire alliance. He told himself he truly hoped the boy could provide some sort of surprise. Bai Feng let out a cold laugh as a sudden breeze began to swirl beneath his feet. He leaped directly into the air and flew toward the inner depths of the academy. Only the 1,000 students remained in the plaza, glancing at one another, unsure of what to do next. One student wondered if he was hallucinating, having just seen the examiner take flight. We see Bai Feng's silhouette gradually vanish into the distance. His power had reached the awakening level at the very least, which was no small feat. It seemed Xianhua University truly was the #1 institution in the entire alliance. After all, a simple examiner already possessed the strength of the awakening level. With Bai Feng gone, Jianlin decided he wasn't going to act impulsively. He planned to wait and see what the others would choose first. Lei Yan and Su Xiao weren't in any particular hurry either. The three of them listened in silence to the conversations buzzing around them. Just then, an applicant approached arena number 5 and placed his hand on the screen below. Instantly, he was enveloped in a blue light, and when he opened his eyes, he was already on the stage. The applicant, Niu Senqian, was officially challenging arena number 5. The time limit was set to 3 minutes, and the trial began. An electronic screen suddenly appeared above the arena, clearly displaying the challenge for everyone to see. Through that giant screen, we see the beasts belonging to both of them. First, we see the beast belonging to the young man named Niu Senqian. It was a small, yellowish-brown calf, standing only about half the height of a person. Naturally, Jianlin checked the beast's information to see what they were dealing with. It was a yellow-footed water stepper, currently at bronze rank 5. Then, we turn our attention to the champion defending the arena. The name of his beast was the Moonlit Night Wolf King. Its quality was epic, and its true rank was silver 1. However, for the sake of the trial, its power had been suppressed to bronze rank 6. With just a single glance, Jianlin knew immediately that Niu Senqian was going to lose. Surviving 3 minutes seemed impossible. If that calf lasted even 1, it would be a miracle. He couldn't help but take another long look at that arena champion. Xianhua University only admits 200 students each year, a very exclusive club indeed. One has to wonder how many people in the entire alliance could actually pass a test like this. It was becoming clear that for those who actually get in, epic quality is the bare minimum. Back on the arena stage, the two began to fight without much preamble, and the result was exactly what we expected it to be. The yellow-footed water stepper was simply no match for the Moonlit Night Wolf King. In less than half a minute, the poor calf's body was already battered and broken. In contrast, the Wolf King looked as if he hadn't even broken a sweat. After delivering the final blow, the wolf calmly laid down beside his master. The arena champion was clearly holding back, showing a restraint that was almost painful to watch. "Da Huang, get up quickly, don't just lie there." Niu Senqian's eyes were completely bloodshot, filled with a desperate, frantic energy. He kept screaming at the water stepper to get back on its feet and keep fighting. But the poor beast had already fallen unconscious from the severity of its injuries. And just like that, his journey in this particular trial came to an abrupt end. The champion simply shook his head and let out a heavy sigh. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a bottle of life potion. "Give this to him to drink. It will heal his wounds." "You have already lost," he added, barely finishing his sentence before the magic took hold. Niu Senqian and his beast were enveloped in a golden light and instantly teleported outside the arena. The entire place fell into a heavy silence, as no one dared to say a word. We see Jianlin look toward Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao, who had already decided whom to challenge. Lei Jiang was the first to answer, declaring his intention to challenge Arena number 3. The champion there was bronze rank 8, while his Thunder Jade Violent Bear was currently bronze 7. Furthermore, his beast possessed an immortal quality, a significant advantage, to be sure. He believed he could pass, and Su Xiaoxiao made the same choice, also picking Arena number 3. "And what about you, Jianlan?" they asked, as his gaze shifted elsewhere. His eyes settled on the arena located closest to the spectator stands. He calmly chose Arena number 1, and though his tone was perfectly normal, his friend's pupils dilated in instant shock. "Are you serious, Jiang He?" they asked, and he simply nodded in response. To be honest, his mind was already made up. Yuan Bao was already at bronze rank 9, so challenging someone of the same rank felt like a waste of time. He felt it was much better to test his limits against the rank 10 champion. Even if he couldn't secure a victory, surviving for 3 minutes would be a piece of cake. And since the decision had been made, there was no turning back now. "Then let's go," Lei Jiang said. "Jiang He, you go first. Su Xiaoxiao and I will stay down here and watch your progress." He nodded with a touch of resignation, accepting that he would be the first to step up. Without a moment's hesitation, he headed directly toward the arena in the furthest corner. And as he approached, we see that many in the crowd began to notice his peculiar presence. Look over there. What is this kid trying to do?" they whispered. Word spread quickly that someone was actually going to challenge Arena number 1. Most assumed he was walking straight to his doom, given that Arena 1 was the peak of the bronze world. How could he possibly win? "A bunch of cowards," someone muttered from the stands. "Are they really going to criticize him before he even gets a chance to try?" One spectator, however, was willing to bet that this young man would actually win. After all, he was the very first SSS rank in the history of the entire alliance. Before long, every eye in the stadium was fixed solely on him. Even Guaoshan took notice of the situation, watching with newfound interest. And so he pushed his way through the crowd, followed closely by his group of lackeys. "Boss Gu, isn't that smelly beggar just an SS rank?" they asked mockingly. They were convinced this brat had only come here to make a complete fool of himself. Does he really think he can challenge Arena number 1? Evidently, Guaoshan hadn't expected Jiang He to be quite so bold either. A look of pure disdain spread across his face as he watched. To him, Jiang He was just a beggar who had crawled out of some forgotten village. "He loves to show off," he muttered, "but we're about to see him humiliated." Jiang He ignored the strange looks from the crowd and placed his hand on the control screen below the arena. In the very next instant, a brilliant golden light completely enveloped him. When he opened his eyes again, we see that he and Xian Bao were already standing inside Arena number 1. The person in charge of this first round was a young man with striking white hair. He carried himself with a distinguished air, introducing himself simply as Jin Sichuan. "I am in charge of the challenges here in Arena number 1, he explained calmly. The white-haired young man gave a slight, polite bow by way of greeting. He truly had the poised demeanor of a young master from a very wealthy family. Jiang He, feeling the pressure, hurriedly introduced himself in return. But as he spoke, he caught a fleeting glimpse of genuine aversion in the other man's eyes. There were no further pleasantries exchanged between the two of them. They both gave a sharp nod, and the battle began without a moment's delay. Without wasting a second, Jin Sichuan summoned his own beast to the field. It was a small bird, covered in feathers as white as the fallen snow. A star marked its head, adorned with a single feather shaped like a golden thread that made it look exceptionally dazzling. Naturally, Jiang He took a moment to check the little bird's information. It was a snowy, golden thread sparrow, epic level, silver 3rd grade, though currently restricted to bronze 10th grade. He gently stroked Xian Bao's head, asking if she was ready for what was coming. Deep down, Xian Bao felt more than ready and urged her master to move forward. Jin Sichuan, however, wasn't one to wait and seized the opportunity to strike first. He commanded Surong to use Glacial Storm, and we see the snowy, golden thread sparrow take flight. The creature soared directly upward, reaching a height of 10 meters in an instant. Its snow-white wings beat against the air, churning up a massive storm 5 meters high. The sheer power radiating from the storm was immense, to say the least. Even before it reached him, the rising gusts of wind were enough to make Jiang He stumble. Once fully formed, the storm didn't hesitate for a second, hurtling directly toward Xian Bao. Xian Bao's body trembled slightly as a ripple of water-blue energy expanded all around her. In that moment, Xian Bao's domain was instantly activated. Standing at the edge of the arena, Jin Sichuan saw the thin protective barrier and mocked it for being as fragile as paper. He wondered if the boy truly intended to stop Surong's glacial storm with such a thing. He told himself the brat would pay the price for his blind arrogance in daring to challenge him. And then, in the blink of an eye, the glacial storm and Xian Bao finally collided. The massive storm swept across the entire plaza, engulfing everything in its path. The watching crowd squinted their eyes, trying to see through the swirling chaos. When the storm finally subsided, every gaze in the place focused back on the arena. But the result left everyone absolutely stunned. That strange combination of turtle and snake had blocked the attack, and what's more, it hadn't taken a scratch. Jin Sichuan's pupils contracted sharply as he wondered how such a thing was even possible. But the reality of the situation was undeniable. The snowy golden thread sparrow took off again, but at its current level, defeating Xian Bao was out of the question. It wasn't even clear if the bird could withstand a single direct attack from her. After all, we are looking at Xian Bao, a true beast of legendary rank. Even though Suorong is 2 levels higher, Jin Sichuan's fury was beginning to cloud his judgment. He muttered to himself about how arrogant this year's rookies had become. He felt that while he might have been the worst of his generation, he wasn't someone a brat could ignore. He commanded Suorong not to stop and to use golden thread strangulation immediately. And here we see the snowy golden thread sparrow soaring back into the air once more. Jiang He's gaze remained calm, as that previous glacial storm had told him everything he needed to know. To him, Xian Bao's victory was now simply a matter of time. Since that was the case, he figured he might as well use the moment for a bit of training. After all, fighting against a beast like this is an excellent learning activity. It was a flying-type beast, an opportunity that, to be honest, doesn't come around very often. Xian Bao continues to defend, standing firm against the onslaught. This time, as Suorong Jin Xian soared into the air, the golden feather on its forehead bristled, becoming hard and sharp. It looked as though the bird were carrying a long golden sword embedded right in its head. In the very next instant, Suorong Jin Xian launched itself into a high-speed dive. Its attack aimed directly at the black snake on Xian Bao's body, but the result, predictably, was exactly the same. Upon touching the Xian Wu domain, the golden thread strangulation felt like striking a solid, immovable rock. The attack shattered instantly, while Xian Bao, to be honest, didn't have so much as a scratch on its shell. All around the arena, waves of shouts and cheers began to erupt from the crowd. And here we see that more and more people were starting to cheer for Jiang He. Jin Sichuan, meanwhile, was becoming completely consumed by fury. He simply couldn't accept that a rookie who looked like a starving brat could block his best attacks. Suorong moved without hesitation as he ordered the bird to strike once more. Right at that moment, Jiang He gave the signal for the counterattack. He shook his head and sighed, realizing that a bronze-rank beast could no longer even serve as a decent training partner for Xian Bao. Since that was the case, he decided it was time to end this fight once and for all. He gave the command for Xian Bao to bring that bird down. Xian Bao understood its master's order instantly, reacting with perfect precision. It reared up and struck the arena floor with immense force, as if summoning abyssal pressure from the depths of the ocean. The Suorong Jin Xian, still flying high, suddenly felt as though an entire mountain were crushing it from above. Incapable of enduring the weight, it plummeted from the sky and crashed directly onto the arena floor. He no longer had the patience to waste any more time, so he ordered Xian Bao to use Taijinsuane, while carefully controlling its strength. He warned the little turtle not to actually corrode the Suorong Jin Xian. The bird let out a sharp cry as Jin Sichuan's frustration finally reached its limit. Fury flooded his mind, and suddenly, he pulled a marble-sized sphere of light from his pocket and crushed it with all his might. A dense mass of energy immediately surged forward, completely enveloping the Suorong Jin Xian. As the light was fully absorbed, the crushing pressure that had been weighing the bird down simply vanished. In an instant, the creature regained its full silver rank level 3 power. Jin Sichuan spat out insults, calling Jiang He a filthy beggar and claiming he had been holding back far too much. He descended into a repetitive, hateful rant, swearing that neither the boy nor his damn turtle would leave the arena alive today. Jin Sichuan's eyes were now overflowing with a cold, unmistakable murderous intent. Deep down, he wanted nothing more than to tear Jiang He to pieces right then and there. He screamed for the kill, and with its silver rank power restored, the bird dispersed the Taijinsuane mist with a single flap of its wings. Jiang He's pupils contracted suddenly as he watched the scene unfold. He immediately sensed that something was very, very wrong. Silver rank level 3, that was 4 full levels above Xian Bao's current standing. To be perfectly honest, a victory now seemed mathematically impossible. After breaking free from the mist, the Suorong Jin Xian beat its wings and soared high into the sky once more. An extremely cold, blue beam of light began to gather and condense within its beak. The glacial ray shot downward like a bolt, aiming directly at Xian Bao in the center of the arena. And yet, right at that critical moment, a soft and strangely warm breeze began to blow out of nowhere. As it reached the arena, that gentle breeze completely extinguished the glacial ray of light. Jin Sichuan, go and receive your punishment yourself, a voice commanded. If there is a next time, you will be expelled immediately. We see Bai Feng approaching slowly, as if he were walking upon the breeze itself, his gaze fixed on Jin Sichuan. His expression was cold, and upon feeling that breeze, Jin Sichuan felt a sudden, sharp chill. The fury that had clouded his mind vanished in an instant, replaced by a sinking realization. He had broken the evaluation rules, and that was something that would certainly be recorded. It would remain on his permanent record, and he would be facing a 6-month suspension as well. But he lacked the courage to argue, so he had no choice but to endure it and accept his punishment. As Jin Sichuan left, Jiang He let out a long, heavy sigh of relief. Deep down, he knew that if Baifeng hadn't arrived in time, Xian Bao would have been seriously injured. He realized he'd been so focused on ending the fight quickly that he'd forgotten Jin Sichuan was a silver rank level 3. It nearly caused a disaster, but at that moment, Baifeng walked slowly toward the center of the arena. This time, the fault was entirely Jin Sichuan's, he stated calmly. You have already passed the evaluation. Besides, in the first round, you obtained a perfect score of 500 points. The admission test, as it turns out, only consists of 2 rounds in total. Each round is worth 500 points, and by reaching a total of 400 points across both, one can pass the test and enter Tsinghua University, a simple enough goal, in theory. His score from the first round alone was already more than enough to secure his place. And all around the arena, the sounds of the crowd began to rise instantly. Exclamations of wonder filled the air, and even the supervisors from the other arenas couldn't help but steal a few glances. In the entire history of Tsinghua University, no one had ever obtained a perfect score in the first round before. He was truly proving himself worthy of being the very first SSS rank in the entire alliance. As he stepped down from the arena, every envious eye followed him, though by some unspoken agreement, no one dared to approach. Wu Outyin stood within the crowd, watching him with an expression that could only be described as somber. To his mind, it didn't matter if the boy had achieved a perfect score in the first round. In his eyes, a filthy beggar would always be just that, a filthy beggar. The second round, after all, was not a test of raw strength. He was eager to see what little tricks the boy might try to pull out of his sleeve this time. He was determined to make him regret ever setting foot in Tsinghua University. And of course, he felt exactly the same way about Lei Jiang. Once the combat had concluded, Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao made their way over to him. Su Xiaoxiao looked at him with nothing short of pure adoration in her eyes. Jiang He, what would you think if I introduced you to my older sister? She asked. She mentioned that her sister was only a year older than he was. She was certain they would make a lovely couple, but he quickly waved his hands to decline the offer. This was already the second time Su Xiaoxiao had tried to set him up with her sister. One has to wonder why this girl is always so intent on selling off her own sister. Shortly after that, it was time for Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao to begin their own evaluations. And as we might have expected, the results were never really in doubt. Both Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao approached him shortly after. Furthermore, their group of bullies managed to overcome the challenge, defeating their opponents in less than 3 minutes. In the end, both Lei Jiang and Su Xiaoxiao walked away with a solid 300 points. It is worth noting that Wu Outyin's group, those brats from the capital, surprisingly all passed the evaluation as well. And to make matters more interesting, they managed to secure 200 points for themselves. Jiang He was understandably confused, wondering how this group of bullies could possibly be so strong. And what a coincidence it was. The previous contracts of all these bullies were so powerful, they were almost blinding. Every single one of them possessed epic aptitude, a fact that only became clear once Lei Jiang explained the situation. It turns out those epic contracts weren't actually summoned by Wu Outyin's group, but were bought for a small fortune. By the following day, fewer than 400 people had successfully passed the initial test. In the main square, Baifeng stood upon the podium and officially announced the start of the second round. This second round was designed to evaluate their development in a secondary profession. Standing by his side, Su Xiaoxiao began to explain that every year, the second round of the admission test follows a pattern. It always evaluates the same core concepts, though the specific tests change with every passing year. Up on the podium, Baifeng cleared his throat and declared the contents of this year's evaluation. He explained that the materials needed to begin any of the Alliance's 36 main professions were all gathered there. The students were to choose one for themselves and successfully complete the initiation process. They were given exactly 1 day to achieve this, as they had to prove their wisdom to him. They would also have to demonstrate their practical skills, and upon hearing this, the crowd erupted into an absolute uproar. Mastering a secondary profession in a single day? To be honest, that sounded like an impossible task. How could such a thing even be possible? No one could believe that this was actually the task for the test. In comparison, Su Xiaoxiao seemed to be the least surprised person in the crowd. She explained that last year, her sister's second round of the admission test had been exactly the same. Upon hearing this, both Lei Jiang and Jiang He turned to look at her immediately. When asked if her sister had passed, Su Xiaoxiao simply gave them a look of pure disdain. After all, if her sister hadn't passed, how else would she have gotten into Tsinghua University? Jiang He scratched his head, feeling a bit embarrassed by his own question. He then asked her which secondary profession her sister had chosen back then. Su Xiaoxiao lowered her head, looking quite thoughtful for a moment. She revealed that her sister had chosen the profession of a blacksmith. One only needs to recognize the materials and answer a few questions to master it, but she didn't recommend they choose it. Jiang He was naturally confused and asked her why that was the case. It was because of her sister's strength, which, let's just say, was a little bit on the extreme side. As soon as she finished saying that, Su Xiaoxiao's face turned red instantly. Jiang He then wondered how many points her sister had managed to obtain. Blacksmithing is considered a T2 category profession, which is no small feat. In the end, her sister had walked away with a total of 300 points. He nodded his head, realizing that the blacksmith profession was certainly not to be underestimated. Then, he asked again, wanting to know more about the other available professions. He wondered which others were popular and which ones were most commonly encountered in these tests. She believed that the blacksmith profession was essentially that of an appraiser, noting that in previous years, most applicants chose easier paths like tailoring, appraising, or cooking. However, we see that the scores for these common professions aren't particularly high either. The appraiser path, which happens to be the highest among them, only grants a total of 200 points. As for the elite professions, well, there is only one available. Suddenly, Su Xiao paused, her expression turning quite serious. And that profession is the creator, but why is it so special? He was already familiar with it. As the name suggests, a creator is someone who can develop solutions to cultivate and enhance a beast's potential. And for that very reason, creators hold a position of supreme importance throughout the entire alliance. Even a novice, one-star creator is a prize that every faction will fight tooth and nail to recruit. Of course, the difficulty of actually becoming a creator increases exponentially. Why is that? Because this path requires a level of knowledge and precision that very few can truly master. It is a role that exists on the edge, balancing between the raw materials and the living potential of the beasts. The significance of this path cannot be overstated, as it represents one of the most profitable and respected roles in their world. It is, quite simply, one of the most demanding developments an aspirant can choose to pursue. He considered how he might begin to embark on such a challenging journey. And it wasn't just because it was an elite profession, but because of his special ability, which allowed him to see the evolution routes of the beasts. With an ability like that, becoming a creator would be a piece of cake, or so he told himself. He turned his gaze toward the front of the stands to see what awaited them. The area had been divided into 36 sections, each filled with the necessary materials for its corresponding profession. His eyes eventually settled on a specific area located at the very far end. What lay before him were the precise materials required for the creator profession, and so, he decided right then to choose that path.